Caleb stood at the head of the table with one hand around his bourbon and the other pressed to his chest like he was about to accept an award. "I'm not great at speeches," he said, which was how Caleb began every speech. The private room went quiet. My father leaned back beneath a gold foil balloon shaped like a 7. The 6 beside it had turned sideways and looked more like a lowercase b, so the decorations behind him appeared to announce that he was turning 7B. "I just want to say," Caleb continued, "that caring for Dad has been the hardest and greatest privilege of my life." My hand stopped inside my purse. Caleb's wife, Dana, looked down at her plate. "There are mornings when you're tired. There are weekends when everybody else is out living their lives. But when you're somebody's only caregiver, you don't get to put yourself first. Only caregiver." The envelope was already in my purse. I had packed it that afternoon after seeing the new schedule taped to Dad's refrigerator, though I still hadn't decided what I would do with it. Dad reached up and gripped Caleb's wrist. His eyes shone. "This boy has put his whole life on hold for me," he told the room. "I don't know where I'd be without him." Everybody applauded. I took out the envelope, wrote 4 words across the front, and set it beside Caleb's steak. "For Dad's only caregiver." Caleb glanced at it and laughed. "What's this? Everything you need." Dad's smile vanished. "Mara." I stood, picked up my coat, and kissed the dry patch near his temple. "Happy birthday, Dad." 11 months earlier, my father called me at 6:20 in the morning because he couldn't find the remote control. Not because he was sick, not because he had fallen. The television was stuck on a local traffic report, and Frank Bennett did not intend to begin his day listening to a man named Chip explain congestion on Interstate 71. "Did you look between the cushions?" I asked. "I'm 75, Mara. I know how a couch works." I sat up in bed and turned on the lamp. Beside me, Luis made a noise like a muffled car horn and pulled the comforter over his head. "Check the kitchen." "Why would it be in the kitchen?" "Because you eat in front of the television and carry your plate back." "I don't carry my plate back. I live alone. There's nobody here to impress." "Then check the bathroom." There was silence. "Found it," Dad said. "In the bathroom?" "No." "Where was it?" "Doesn't matter." He hung up. Luis lowered the comforter enough to expose one eye. "Please tell me that was a medical emergency. He found the remote." "Thank God. Is the mayor sending anyone?" I threw a pillow at him, but I was laughing. That was the problem with Dad. He could be impossible in ways that were genuinely funny, and the funny parts bought him more forgiveness than they should have. At that point, he had been living alone for almost 2 years. My mother, Elaine, died after 14 months of cancer treatments, 4 emergency admissions, and a final week in which time seemed to stop everywhere except the clock above her hospital bed. Caleb remembered those months as something the family endured together. I remembered them in parking receipts. I had a stack in my glove compartment from the oncology center, the hospital garage, and the pharmacy that stayed open until midnight. Caleb brought Mom flowers twice. The second bouquet was lilies, which she hated because she said they smelled like a funeral home. She thanked him anyway. "That was thoughtful," Dad told me after Caleb left. "He was supposed to take her to treatment Tuesday. He had a work thing. He installs flooring with Darren. Darren is his friend. Work is work." I had missed a meeting that same Tuesday to drive Mom. Dad didn't mention it because my absence from work was not a sacrifice. It was the natural migration of a responsible daughter toward an unattended task. Caleb wasn't heartless. That would have been easier. He loved Mom. He sat beside her on good days and did impressions until she laughed so hard she had to hold a pillow against her ribs. He could walk into a room carrying nothing but his own face and somehow leave everybody feeling like he had brought a gift. But when love became repetitive, Caleb got restless. He would promise Thursday, then call Wednesday night with a sore throat that disappeared by Friday. He would say, "Tell me what you need," in a tone that made the telling feel like an administrative burden I had invented, and my parents protected him from the weight of disappointing them. "He feels things deeply," Mom once whispered after he missed another appointment. I was changing the pillowcase beneath her head because she had sweated through it. I also feel things, I said. I know, honey. But you handle them better. That sentence followed me for years. It sounded like praise until you noticed it was being used as a shovel. After Mom died, Dad became both easier and harder. Easier because there were fewer appointments. Harder because grief gave every demand a respectable coat to wear. He called me about light bulbs, expiration dates, strange noises from the furnace, and whether chicken could still be eaten if one corner looked gray. He called Caleb to watch Ohio State games. I lived 26 minutes away. Caleb lived 8. Dad explained the difference by saying, "You're already out and about." I never learned where he thought Caleb was. The morning of the remote control crisis, I drove to work telling myself I was going to establish rules. No calls before 7 unless there was blood, smoke, or chest pain. No pretending he couldn't use the grocery delivery app I had installed. No asking me to come over and take a quick look at something that required a ladder, a flashlight, and half my Saturday. By lunch, he had texted me a picture of his kitchen faucet. "It's dripping again." I replied, "Put a bowl under it. I'll look Sunday." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Your mother would have called a plumber." I wrote, "Mom would have made you call a plumber." He sent back a thumbs up, which was Dad's preferred way to make a rude conversation appear resolved. That evening, Caleb called while I was standing in the frozen food aisle. "Dad says you're mad at him." "I'm holding a bag of peas, Caleb. My emotional range is limited. He's lonely." "I know." "He said you snapped at him about the sink. I told him I'd look at it Sunday." "Why wait? I do it, but I'm slammed." "With what?" He hesitated just long enough. "Stuff." I put the peas in my cart. "You live 8 minutes away. Here we go." "Where are we going?" "You always do this thing where everything has to be exactly equal." "No, I do the thing where you offer concern as your half of the labor." A woman reaching for frozen pizza glanced at me. I smiled at her as if this was how all emotionally stable adults selected vegetables. Caleb exhaled into the phone. "I'll call him." "Thank you." "You don't have to make me feel like garbage. I asked you to call Dad. It's the way you ask." Caleb did call him. Then he called me back 20 minutes later to report that Dad sounded better, as if he had completed a wellness intervention instead of talking about football. 2 weeks later, Dad had the stroke. It happened at a hardware store on a Wednesday afternoon. He was standing near a display of birdseed when his right hand stopped cooperating. A clerk noticed his speech sounded thick and called 911, despite Dad insisting he had swallowed wrong. Caleb called me from the emergency room. His voice was different enough that I knew before he said anything. "Dad's in the hospital." I was already standing. My chair rolled backward and struck the filing cabinet. "What happened?" "They think maybe a stroke. A small one. They're doing scans." "Is he awake?" "Yeah." "He's pissed." "Good." I grabbed my purse and told my supervisor I had to leave. On the drive, every red light felt personal. Dad was propped up in a narrow bed when I arrived. His color looked normal, which made the hospital bracelet seem like an accusation. Caleb stood near the window with his arms folded. He had somehow found time to buy coffee. Dad looked at me and said, "They cut my shirt." His speech dragged slightly on the last word. "I'll buy you another shirt." It was a good shirt. It had a bleach spot on the stomach. "That's not the point." I leaned down and kissed his forehead. His right hand lay on the blanket, fingers curled as if he were loosely holding an invisible handle. Caleb touched my shoulder. "Doctor said it's mild." Dad rolled his eyes. "They keep saying mild like that means free." "Can you move your hand?" I asked. "I already performed for them." "For me." He lifted it. The fingers trembled, but they moved. I smiled because he was watching my face. Then I walked into the hallway and pressed both palms against the cold cinder block wall. Caleb followed me. "He's going to be okay," he said. "You don't know that." "No, but that's what they said. They said mild. That's basically okay." I turned around. He looked scared. Not theatrically scared, not waiting for someone to reassure him. His coffee shook against its plastic lid. For 1 second, he was just my brother. I hugged him. He held on harder than I expected. Dad stayed 3 nights. Caleb came every evening, bringing contraband coffee and stories from home. I came before work during lunch, and after work with a notebook. I wrote down medication changes, therapy recommendations, follow-up dates, warning signs, and the names of every person who entered the room. On the second day, a physical therapist asked who would help Dad at home. "Both of us," Caleb said quickly. Dad smiled at him. I looked down at my notebook. At discharge, Caleb carried Dad's bag and joked with the nurse until she laughed. I went through the medication list twice and asked why one dosage differed from the neurologist's notes. In the parking garage, Dad handed Caleb the keys. "You drive," he said. Caleb grinned. "Absolutely." Then Dad looked at me and added, "Mara, you follow us. We'll need groceries on the way." That was how it began. Not with a family meeting, not with a decision. Just Caleb behind the wheel, Dad beside him, and me following their taillights with a list in my lap. At the house, Caleb helped Dad into his recliner, adjusted the footrest, and took a picture of them together. "First day home," he said. "Proof the old man is indestructible." Dad laughed. I put away the groceries, lined up the new pill bottles, changed the sheets, and found the discharge papers crumpled beneath Caleb's jacket. Before I left, Dad pressed the spare house key into my palm. "In case I need you," he said. Caleb was still sitting 6 feet away. I closed my fingers around the key. Okay, it was such a small word. I had no idea how much of my life could fit inside it. The first night Dad was home, he called at 1:14 in the morning. I answered before the second ring. What happened? I need to take the white pill. My heart was still sprinting. Which white pill? The round one. "Dad, half of them are white." "Well, that's helpful." I turned on the bedside lamp. Luis groaned and rolled away from it. "Get the list I left on the counter," I said. "I'm already sitting down." "Where?" "In my chair." "Then the list is 15 feet from you. I shouldn't be walking around in the dark. Turn on a light." He went quiet. In the background, I heard the television and the scrape of his walker. He had resisted the walker at the hospital until a therapist called it temporary. Dad would accept almost any indignity if it came with an expiration date. Luis sat up. "Do you need to go over there?" "I don't know yet." He rubbed his face. "Ask him if he has chest pain." "He doesn't have chest pain." "Ask anyway. Luis wants to know if you have chest pain. Tell Luis I'm trying to read." I heard paper unfold. "Okay," Dad said. "It says one at bedtime. Did you take it at bedtime? If I remembered, would I be calling you?" I pictured the pill organizer I had filled that afternoon. "Look at the container marked Wednesday night. It's empty. Then you took it. Or it fell out. Did it fall out?" "I don't know. That's what falling out means." We spent 12 minutes searching the carpet by phone before he noticed the pill was not white. It was pale blue. He'd taken it. After we hung up, Luis lay back and stared at the ceiling. "We need a system," he said. I made a system. "We need one that doesn't involve us crawling around your dad's living room at 1 in the morning from 26 minutes away. He's scared, I know." Luis said it gently, which made me defensive. He just had a stroke. "I know that too. I can't tell him not to call." "I didn't say that." "You were thinking it. I was thinking I have to be up in 4 hours. So do I. That's somehow not comforting." He turned off the lamp. The next morning, I added colored stickers to Dad's pill bottles and made a larger chart in 18-point font. I taped one copy above the kitchen counter and another beside his recliner. Dad examined the chart as if I had installed a security camera. "Red in the morning? Blue at night?" "Yes." "What about the green?" "With dinner." "I thought green was blood pressure. Green is diabetes. Why would diabetes be green? What color would you prefer your diabetes to be?" He considered it. "Yellow." "Of course." I replaced the green stickers with yellow ones while he watched. For the first few weeks, I told myself the intensity was temporary. Dad had occupational therapy on Mondays, physical therapy on Wednesdays, and a visiting nurse on Fridays. His right hand grew steadier. His speech returned almost completely, except when he was tired or angry, which meant he sometimes sounded drunk while insisting he was perfectly fine. He hated the exercises. A therapist named Monica gave him a foam block to squeeze. "It's insulting," he told me. "It's foam. She acts like I've never used my hand before. That's not what she's saying. I rebuilt a transmission when I was 22. Then this should be easy." He squeezed the block once, glared at it, and placed it on the end table. Monica glanced at me. I picked it up and threw it at his chest. He caught it with his right hand. For a second, all three of us stared. Then Dad grinned. "See?" Monica laughed so hard she had to sit down. Dad performed the rest of his exercises without complaint, though only after making her promise not to tell anyone I had assaulted a stroke patient. Those moments kept me attached to the work. Dad could turn warm without warning. He would squeeze my wrist with his good hand and say, "You've got your mother's patience," as if patience were something I had inherited rather than something he kept withdrawing from my account. Caleb came most Sundays. He mowed the lawn even when it didn't need mowing and drove Dad to the barber shop. He brought sandwiches from a deli Dad loved, piled with pastrami, melted cheese, and enough sodium to preserve a body indefinitely. Doctor said low salt, I reminded him. Caleb held up the bag. "It's one lunch. It's every Sunday." "Exactly. Once a week." Dad unwrapped his sandwich. "Your brother understands morale. Your blood pressure doesn't care about morale. That's a terrible way to live." Caleb laughed. I did too, because Dad's timing was good and because refusing to laugh would have made me the person standing between a sick man and a sandwich. After lunch, Caleb took a picture of Dad on the porch. He posted it with a caption about appreciating every day. By dinner, relatives I had not heard from since the funeral were commenting that Caleb was a wonderful son. I was at Dad's kitchen sink, soaking a pan he had burned while reheating soup. My cousin Linda texted me the picture. "Your brother is such a blessing to your dad." I stared at it long enough for the screen to go dark, then replied with a heart. I tried to create a shared schedule. I made it as simple as possible. My name beside Monday and Thursday, Caleb's beside Tuesday and Saturday, visiting nurse Friday. I sent it to a group chat with Dad, Caleb, and Dana. Caleb responded with 3 thumbs-up emojis. Dad wrote, "Why is Dana in this?" Dana wrote, "Wondering that myself." I laughed out loud at my desk. The first Tuesday, Caleb arrived 20 minutes late but did arrive. The second Tuesday, he called me at 4:30. "Darren needs me on a job in Newark." "Okay. So I can't get to Dad. Then trade with me. I'll do tonight. You do Thursday." "I can't Thursday." Dana's work thing. From somewhere near his phone, Dana said, "My work thing is next Thursday." There was a pause. Caleb lowered his voice. "She has a lot of work things. Then Saturday. I already do Saturday. You did one Saturday. That's still my day." I looked at the clock. Dad needed dinner by 6 because of his evening medication. "Fine," I said. "I'll go." "You're the best." "No, I'm available." Those aren't the same. You know what I mean. I did know. He meant the problem had disappeared. When I reached Dad's house, he was standing at the stove trying to open a jar with his weak hand. "Why didn't you use the rubber grip? Why didn't you get a normal jar?" I took it from him. Caleb was supposed to bring dinner. He got stuck at work. "You talked to him?" He called. "Did he tell you I was coming?" "He said you'd handle it." The lid came loose with a pop. Dad looked pleased. "See? Teamwork." I set the jar down harder than necessary. "That's not teamwork. Don't start." "I'm not starting anything. You and your brother have always kept score. I made a schedule because I can't be here every day. Nobody asked you to be here every day." I looked at him. He looked back, honestly confused. There were clean towels folded on the counter because I had washed them. His therapy appointments were written on the calendar because I had scheduled them. The refrigerator held 5 labeled meals I had made. A plastic basket beside his chair contained tissues, glucose tablets, chargers, reading glasses, and the remote control because I had learned that independence often depended on placing the right object within reach. Dad saw all of it as the house returning to normal. Normal had no author. "I'm going to heat the soup," I said. "That's all I was asking." He turned on the television. At work, I started keeping my phone face up beside my keyboard. My supervisor, Beth, noticed. "You can put it on ring," she said. "You don't have to stare at it." "I'm not staring. You've checked it 4 times since I walked in." Beth was 57, wore silver hoops every day, and had the unsettling management style of remembering what people told her. "How's your dad?" "Improving." "How are you?" "Also improving." That's not an answer. It's the answer I have. She sat on the corner of my desk. "Use the family leave if you need it. I'm saving it." "For what?" I didn't know. Something worse, maybe. We act like disaster comes in measured portions, and we should keep a little time in reserve. "I'm okay," I told her. Beth studied me, then nodded. "Regional training team is opening applications next month. I was going to recommend you." The regional team meant better pay, actual authority, and travel to offices throughout Ohio and western Pennsylvania. Before Dad's stroke, I had wanted it badly enough to keep the job description saved on my laptop. How much travel? 2 or 3 nights some weeks, none on others. I pictured Dad's medication chart, his therapy schedule, the jar on the counter. Can I think about it? You should. That evening, Luis cooked pasta at my apartment. He had opened a bottle of wine and put on the jazz playlist he used when he wanted to make an ordinary Wednesday feel intentional. I arrived 45 minutes late. "Dad?" he asked. His glucose monitor gave him an error. Was his glucose bad? The monitor strip was upside down. Luis turned off the burner. "I'm sorry, I know. No, I mean it." "I know you mean it." There were 2 plates on the table. The sauce had formed a dark skin around the edges. He poured me wine anyway. "How was your day?" I asked. He leaned against the counter. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes." "You asked that while checking your phone." I placed it face down. Luis smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. My day was fine. We ate. He told me about a supplier who had shipped 12 bathroom faucets to the wrong renovation project. I laughed in the right places. Halfway through dinner, my phone vibrated against the table. Neither of us reached for it. It vibrated again. Luis twirled pasta around his fork. "If you don't check, you'll imagine something terrible and not hear another word I say. I can wait." "That's not the same as being here." I turned the phone over. It was Caleb. "Dad says his hand feels numb." "Can you call him?" I pushed back from the table. Luis closed his eyes. "I have to call." "Of course. Don't say it like that." "Like what? Like I'm choosing this?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Aren't you?" Dad's hand was fine. He had fallen asleep with his wrist bent beneath him. I stayed on the phone until the tingling passed, then called Caleb. "Why didn't you call him yourself?" "I did. He said he wanted you." "And that was enough for you?" What was I supposed to do? Argue with a man who had a stroke? "You could have gone over. I had 2 beers. So you made it my emergency. I let you know. I thought that was responsible." Behind him, I heard a television crowd roar. "Are you watching the game?" Dad and I were texting about it. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Caleb mistook the silence for surrender. "He's okay, right? He's fine. Good. You scared me." I hung up. Luis had cleared the plates by the time I returned to the kitchen. Mine sat covered with foil on the counter. "You could have kept eating," I said. "I lost my appetite." He kissed my cheek before leaving, which hurt more than if he had slammed the door. The next morning, Dad called at 6:45. "Did you hear from your brother?" "Last night." He checked on me 3 times. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the untouched pillow beside me. That was nice of him. "He worries." "I know." Dad cleared his throat. "Since you're up, I'm almost out of coffee." I closed my eyes. "What kind?" "The good kind. Not the bitter one you bought last time?" I reached for the notebook on my nightstand and wrote coffee beneath pharmacy, laundry, and call neurologist. Anything else? No, he said. Then, with genuine warmth, I don't know what I'd do without you. For 1 weak second, it felt like enough. I bought the coffee, not that morning. I waited until after work, which felt like a boundary even though Dad had not requested a delivery time. I stopped at the grocery store, bought the dark roast he liked, and drove it to his house along with the prescription I had picked up during lunch. He was sitting on the porch with Caleb when I pulled in. There she is, Dad said, the supply chain. Caleb laughed. I carried the bags inside. On the kitchen table sat 2 empty deli wrappers and a pair of pharmacy reading glasses Dad had claimed he didn't need. You bought coffee? Caleb called through the screen door. He asked me to. I would have grabbed it. I looked at the wrappers. When? Today. I was right by the store. Dad came in behind him, moving carefully but without the walker. Your brother took me to look at lawnmowers. You already have a lawnmower. He was looking. Caleb spread his hands. Spring sales. It was October. Dad's visiting nurse ended her Friday appointments 2 weeks later. Physical therapy reduced to every other Wednesday. Monica left him a packet of exercises and made him promise to keep using the foam block. Dad placed the packet beneath a stack of appliance catalogs. This is where rehabilitation goes to die, I told him. I've been rehabilitated. You still drop your fork. I never liked that fork. Without the weekly visits, my phone became the substitute for professional observation. Was he more tired? Was his speech different? Had he checked his blood sugar? Had he taken the yellow pill that should have been marked green? Dad answered every question as if I were trying to trick him into confessing weakness. I checked it. What was the number? Good. What number is good? The kind you don't have to worry about. You don't remember, do you? I don't retain useless information. One Thursday, I arrived with dinner and found a dish towel scorched black along one edge in the sink. Dad said it had happened days ago. The towel was still wet. What were you cooking? Eggs. At 4 p.m? I'm retired. Eggs are available all day. You left the burner on. I turned it off. After the towel caught fire? It didn't catch fire. It smoldered. Oh, well then. He settled into his chair, offended by my tone rather than disturbed by the event. I called Caleb from the driveway. We need to hire somebody. For what? To check on him during the week. You check on him. The answer came so easily that I almost missed what it contained. I can't be his entire plan. You're not. I'm there all the time. You're there on Sundays and Tuesdays when I can. You haven't been there on a Tuesday in 3 weeks. I call. He left a burner on. Caleb was quiet. It could happen to anybody, he said finally. Then anybody can pay half for an aide. Why are you making this about money? Because aides charge money. Dad's gonna hate it. Dad hates whole grain bread. He still needs it. Caleb promised to talk to him, which meant he waited until I brought it up and then looked thoughtful. We sat around Dad's kitchen table the following Sunday. Dana came because, as she put it, she wanted to observe the summit before anyone volunteered her for a committee. Dad folded his arms. I don't need a babysitter. Good, Dana said. They charge extra if you make them sing. Dad looked at her, then laughed despite himself. I liked Dana. She had married Caleb 7 years earlier and never confused loving him with believing him. She was an accountant for a commercial landscaping company, kept mints in every purse she owned, and could puncture a dramatic moment without seeming cruel. We're talking about someone a few mornings a week, I said. Help with breakfast, medication, maybe laundry. I can do laundry. You washed a red towel with your undershirts. They're pink now. It's festive. Caleb leaned back in his chair. Maybe we try it temporarily. Dad looked at him. You think I need this? It was the exact question Caleb hated answering. Dad could turn disappointment into a room and lock him inside it. I think Mara's worried, Caleb said. I stared at him. Dana unwrapped a mint. That wasn't the question. Caleb shot her a look. Dad turned to me. So this is your idea? Yes. And who's paying? You can afford it. That's not an answer. You are, Dad. It's your care. He glanced at Caleb as if hoping his son would object. Caleb examined the grout between the floor tiles. Dad's mouth tightened. Your mother never would have let strangers come into this house. Mom had me, I said. The words came out before I could soften them. Nobody spoke. Dad's face changed, not with guilt exactly. It was more like I had moved a piece of furniture he relied on and exposed the dust beneath it. Dana placed her mint wrapper on the table. A few mornings sounds reasonable. Dad agreed to an interview, which he described as hearing the case for the prosecution. Denise Walker arrived 2 days later wearing purple sneakers and a denim jacket embroidered with sunflowers. She was 61, had worked as a nursing assistant for 30 years, and did not use the voice people sometimes adopt around anyone holding a cane. Dad tested her immediately. What would you do if I refused breakfast? Ask what you wanted for lunch. What if I refuse that? Leave you a sandwich and go do the laundry? What if I don't want you doing my laundry? Then I'd sit down and watch television until you got tired of paying me. Dad looked at me. I like her, I said. That's not relevant. Denise came Monday through Thursday from 8 until noon. Dad complained for the first week that she moved things. By the second week, he was saving the crossword puzzle for her. By the third, he let her trim the burned edges off the dish towels instead of throwing them away. The arrangement gave me back 4 mornings and 2 evenings, though it took my body a while to believe that. I still woke before the alarm. I still checked my phone during meetings. Sometimes I drove toward Dad's exit before remembering I could go home. Beth reopened applications for the regional training team. You're applying, she said. It wasn't a question. I looked through the glass wall of her office. My phone sat on my desk, silent. I'm thinking about it. You've been thinking about it for 9 months. My situation changed. Your father's improving. He still needs help. He has help. Paid help ends at noon. Beth sat back. Do you want the position? Yes. It felt strange to say it aloud. Wanting something had become almost embarrassing, like being caught eating directly from the refrigerator. Then apply. I completed the application that night at Luis's apartment. He made popcorn and read my answers over my shoulder. This sentence is terrible, he said. It is not. I facilitate cross-functional cooperation to improve training outcomes. It sounds like a hostage note written by human resources. That's how promotion applications work. Tell them you're good at explaining things to people who are convinced they already understand. That sounds insulting. It's your core skill. You've been practicing on your family. I elbowed him. He kissed the side of my head. For a couple of hours, we felt like ourselves again. The interview went well. Beth told me unofficially that I was the strongest internal candidate. The job would mean travel 2 or 3 nights during busy weeks, but I would know the schedule a month in advance. I called Caleb before I let myself feel excited. If I get this, I'll need you to cover more, I said. How much more? 2 evenings, some weeks, maybe a morning if Denise is out. That's doable. I need a real answer. That is a real answer. No last-minute work emergencies. Mara, I said, I'll do it. And if you can't, you arrange the backup. You don't just text me. I understand how calendars work. I'm serious. So am I. His voice softened. You should take it. You've been talking about that job forever. The encouragement surprised me enough that my eyes stung. Thank you. Dad's better now. We can manage. I held on to that word. 3 days later, Denise called me at work. Your dad asked me not to come tomorrow. I stood up from my desk. Why? He said Caleb's taking him to breakfast and they'll be gone all morning. That sounded plausible. Caleb sometimes changed his schedule. Did Dad cancel just tomorrow? There was a pause. He told me he's reconsidering the whole arrangement. I closed my office door. Did he say why? He said family should take care of family. I called Dad first. He answered cheerfully. How's the corporate ladder? Why did you fire Denise? I didn't fire her. I told her we're taking a break. Why? She's expensive. You knew what she cost. I've been thinking. That's always where trouble starts. He ignored that. Caleb says between the two of you, I'm covered. My grip tightened around the phone. What exactly did Caleb promise? That I don't need strangers here. That isn't a promise, that's an opinion. He's stepping up. Which days? We'll work that out. No, you'll work it out before you cancel the person who's already doing the work. Dad's tone cooled. I don't appreciate being managed. I don't appreciate being volunteered. You make everything sound like a burden. I looked through the glass wall at Beth, who was speaking to someone with a folder in her hand. My application folder, maybe. Put Denise back on the schedule, I said. It's my house. Yes. My money. Yes. My decision. Yes. And my time is mine. He went silent. I had never said it that plainly before. When he answered, his voice was low and wounded. I guess I know where I stand. He hung up. Caleb did not answer my first call, or my second. At 7 that evening, he finally called back while I was sitting in my car outside Dad's house. You made him feel helpless, he said. He fired Denise because of you. He was already unhappy with her. He saves her the crossword. That doesn't mean he wants a stranger washing his underwear. She doesn't care about his underwear. Well, he does. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. What did you promise him? I said family could cover it. Family is not a person. What did you promise? I'll do more. How much? As much as I can. There it was. The unit of measurement Caleb had used his whole life. Beth offered me the regional position, I said. That's great. It requires travel. We'll figure it out. You just canceled the thing that would let me go. I didn't cancel anything. Dad did. Because you told him we could cover it. We can. No, Caleb, I can. You visit. That's unfair. Then prove me wrong. He exhaled sharply. Take the job, Mara. I'll handle Dad. I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly that I mistook wanting for evidence. The next morning, I accepted the position. By afternoon, Dad had hired Denise back. Caleb had called him, argued with him, and somehow gotten him to reverse himself. I never learned exactly what he said. Dad only muttered that everybody was overreacting and told me not to make a federal case out of it. For once, Caleb had done what he promised. That Sunday, Dad told everyone at dinner that Caleb had worked out the whole aid situation. I was the one who had found Denise, interviewed her, arranged her hours, made the payment schedule, and restocked the house so she could do her job. Caleb caught my eye across the table. He looked embarrassed. Then Dad raised his beer toward him, and Caleb smiled. I smiled back. It was easier than asking him to hand the credit over in front of everybody. The regional job began with 3 days in Pittsburgh. Beth booked me a room near the office and sent me a training schedule dense enough to qualify as structural support. Before I left, I made Dad a calendar. He stared at it on the refrigerator. You know I can read the one on my phone. You call me to ask what day it is. That's conversation. Denise is here until noon. Caleb's coming Tuesday and Wednesday evening. Your meals are labeled. Am I allowed to select my own socks? Only from the approved sock list. He followed me to the door. Drive carefully. I will. And call when you get there. I will. Not while you're driving? Dad, I'm just saying. At my car, he stood on the porch with one hand lifted. He looked smaller than he had before the stroke. Not frail exactly. Reduced. As if the world had been built around his reach and somebody had quietly moved everything 2 inches farther away. I almost canceled. Instead, I drove to Pittsburgh. For the first hour, I listened to an audiobook without absorbing a word. Then the hills thickened, my phone stayed silent, and something inside me loosened. The hotel room had 2 beds, even though there was only one of me. I put my suitcase on one and bounced on the other like a person trying out independence in a showroom. Luis called while I was ordering dinner. How's Pennsylvania? Confusingly vertical. How many emergency calls from Frank? None. Should we notify the authorities? I called him twice. That's not what I asked. He sounded good. Caleb brought him chili. Is chili on the approved list? It's not deli pastrami. Progress. I could hear a smile in his voice. Mine came naturally in response. "I wish you were here," I said. "So do I. Next trip." Luis was quiet. "What?" "Nothing. You said nothing like it had a resume." He sighed. "Let's get through this trip." The next morning, I stood in front of 19 employees and taught a session on conflict resolution. I talked about hidden expectations, clear ownership, and the danger of assuming silence meant agreement. The irony was so aggressive, I nearly laughed. During the afternoon break, Caleb texted me a picture of Dad at the kitchen table eating chili. Dad held up his spoon like a trophy. "Your patient survives." I typed, "He's not my patient." Caleb replied, "Fine, your difficult client." I saved the picture. On Wednesday evening, Denise called. My chest tightened when I saw her name. "Everything okay?" "Your dad's fine. I'm calling about tomorrow. I've got a fever, so I won't be in. I'm still in Pittsburgh." "I know." I called Caleb first. That surprised me. "What did he say?" "He said he'd handle breakfast." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. "He did?" He also said to stop sounding shocked. I laughed. Caleb arrived at Dad's house before 8 the next morning. He cooked eggs, checked the medication chart, and even sent me the glucose number without being asked. For one whole morning, I was not the hinge. When I returned Thursday night, Dad said, "Your brother makes better eggs. Then I'll never make you eggs again." "That's not what I meant." "I know. I'm just protecting you from inferior eggs." Dad smiled and pulled me into a one-armed hug. The hug lasted 2 seconds. I carried it home for days. My second trip was to Erie. Luis had planned to come, but one of his renovation projects had fallen behind, and he said he couldn't lose the hours. "You don't have to explain," I told him. "I'm not explaining. I'm informing." "Okay, I'm allowed to be busy too. I know that." His face softened. "I wanted to go. I wanted you there." Neither of us said that wanting had stopped being enough. The first day in Erie went smoothly. On the second, Dad called during my opening session. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I excused myself and answered in the hall. "What's wrong?" I fell. The hallway seemed to tip beneath me. "Where are you?" "In the living room." "Are you hurt?" "My hip's sore." "Did you hit your head?" "No." "Are you sure?" "I think I'd notice." "Can you stand?" "I already did. Why didn't you call Caleb?" "I called you. That's not what I asked." A door opened behind me. Beth stepped into the hall. I covered the phone. My dad fell. "Go," she said. I drove 3 hours through hard rain, imagining fractures, blood clots, another stroke. Dad answered the door wearing slippers and carrying a cup of coffee. "You drove home?" I stared at him. "You fell." "I tripped over the footstool. You said your hip hurt." "It did. Now it doesn't." "Did anybody check you?" "Caleb came over." I stopped. "When?" "About 10 minutes after I called you." Caleb emerged from the kitchen carrying the foam block. "She made it," he said. "You knew I was driving?" I texted. My phone was in my purse. At a rest stop outside Youngstown, I had seen a message from him that said, "I'm with Dad. He seems okay." That was not the same as "don't drive home. Why didn't you call me? I figured you were on the road." That's why you call, so you can answer while driving. You tell me to turn around. Dad lowered himself into the recliner. "Both of you need to calm down." Caleb tossed the foam block from one hand to the other. "He's fine, Mara." I checked his pupils. I took his blood pressure. I called the nurse line. I looked at him. "What?" he said. "Nothing." "No, say it. I'm glad you handled it." "You don't look glad." "I drove 3 hours in a storm." "Because you don't trust anybody else." Dad pointed at me. "That's true." I rounded on him. "You called me because you answer." The room went quiet. Caleb stopped tossing the block. There it was again, the family's entire operating system in 4 words. I went into the kitchen and made myself a glass of water. Caleb followed. "I really did have it handled," he said. "I know." "Do you?" "I do now." He leaned against the counter. "You don't leave room for anybody else." I laughed once. That is unbelievable. I'm not saying I've always been great. I know I flake. You flake because there's always room. I'm the room. You also take over, after you disappear. Sometimes before I get the chance. I set down the glass. Do you want more responsibility? Yes. Then take it. I'm trying. Trying isn't a shift. You see? That. You turn everything into a performance review, because Dad's medication can't wait for your personal growth. Caleb looked toward the living room. His voice dropped. You think this is easy for me? He never trusts me with anything real? Then when I do something right, you look at me like I stole it. That stopped me. I had spent years believing Dad's praise meant trust. Maybe Caleb knew the difference better than I did. I said I was glad, I told him. You said it like a hostage. Despite myself, I smiled. He did too. I returned to Erie before dawn and finished the trip. Beth did not criticize me, but 2 weeks later, she assigned a major presentation to someone else. Continuity matters, she said. I understand. I know you do. That was worse. At home, Luis and I tried to plan a weekend away. We chose a cabin near Hocking Hills, booked it, canceled when Dad had a cardiology appointment moved, rebooked, then canceled again when Caleb said he had to work. The second cancellation cost $200. I'll pay you back, I told Luis. That isn't the issue. I know. No, you say that whenever you want the issue to stop talking. We were in my kitchen. He'd come over with an overnight bag, but it remained zipped near the door. The appointment was moved, I said. He shouldn't go alone. Then Caleb can take him. He can't. Denise? She doesn't drive him. So reschedule. It took 6 weeks to get this appointment. Luis rubbed both hands over his face. There will always be a reason. He had a stroke. 5 months ago. As opposed to what? A stroke with an expiration date? I'm not asking you to abandon him. You're acting like I am. I'm asking where I fit. You fit here. Where's here, Mara? I had no answer that didn't sound like a waiting room. Luis looked at the overnight bag. I love you, he said, but I'm starting to feel like the person you call after everybody else is settled. That's not fair. I know. That's why it took me months to say it. He picked up the bag. I wanted to tell him not to go. I wanted to promise him a future in which my phone stayed silent and my father's needs arrived politely between business hours. Instead, I asked, Are we breaking up? Luis swallowed. I think we've been breaking up. We're just finally both in the room. He kissed my forehead and left. I stood in the kitchen until the motion light outside switched off. The next morning, I drove Dad to cardiology. Caleb met us there carrying coffee for all 3 of us. He handed me mine. You look terrible, he said. Thank you. What happened? Luis left. Caleb's face changed. Oh, Mara. Dad turned from the reception desk. What's going on? Nothing, I said. Caleb put an arm around me. I let him. When the receptionist called Dad's name, he looked back at us and frowned, impatient to be attended to. Caleb released me. I'm sorry, he whispered. Then Dad held out his jacket and I took it. The cardiologist said Dad's heart was fine. Better than fine, Dad corrected as we walked toward the parking garage. He said strong. He said stable, I told him. Stable is strong at my age. Caleb pressed the elevator button. Let him have it. Dad pointed at him. He understands medicine. He asked the cardiologist if bourbon counts as a blood thinner. It was a reasonable question. The elevator opened. Caleb stepped aside with an exaggerated bow, and Dad shuffled in laughing. I followed with the jacket over my arm and the folder of test results tucked beneath it. They went to lunch without me. I had a meeting at 1, so I drove back to the office and ate crackers from the vending machine while Beth explained that I had missed another planning call. I was at the appointment, I said. I know. He can't go alone. I'm not asking you to defend it. It sounds like you are. Beth removed her glasses. You're very good at this work, Mara. You're also currently doing 2 full-time jobs, and only one of them is on our payroll. I looked at the conference room schedule behind her. I can make the travel work. You left Erie in the middle of a session. My father fell. and he was okay. I didn't know that. I'm not criticizing the decision. I'm telling you it affected the work. That was Beth's gift. She could make facts sound kind and still leave nowhere to hide. The regional position came with a 90-day trial period. I made it 43. I returned to my former role without losing my job, which everybody treated as good news. Beth told me I could apply again later. Coworkers said things like, "Family comes first and you won't regret being there," as though regret were proof of bad character. The pay increase disappeared before it reached my second paycheck. I did not tell Dad. Caleb knew because I called him from the parking lot after speaking with Beth. "You quit?" he asked. I stepped back. "Why?" I laughed. "You cannot be asking me that. I covered everything while you were in Pittsburgh. You did. Then I left Erie because Dad called me instead of you. That wasn't my fault, I know. Then why are you saying it like it was? Because this isn't about one person's fault. Did Beth fire you? No. So you made the choice." I closed my eyes. "Yes, Caleb. I made the choice." He was quiet. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. I told you to take the job. I know. I said I'd help. You did help. Then don't put this on me. I'm not putting it on you. I called because I'm sad." That silenced him. Our family knew how to respond to blame. Sadness was harder. There was no accusation to defend against, no schedule to renegotiate. "I'm sorry," he said. "Me too. I could take Dad more." "You always say that in the future tense." "I mean it. I know you do." That was the cruelest part. Caleb usually meant what he promised at the moment he promised it. Dad improved enough to walk around the house without the cane, though he carried it when we went out because he liked the way people held doors. He cooked again if Denise set out the ingredients. He learned to use the glucose monitor correctly and still called me with the result, partly for reassurance and partly because numbers were boring unless they belonged to someone else too. Denise remained the one arrangement that worked. She came 4 mornings a week, argued with Dad about game shows, and developed a method for getting him to do his hand exercises by betting quarters on how long he could hold a soup can. Once I arrived early and found them at the kitchen table dividing $9 in winnings. "He cheats," Dad told me. Denise slid 2 quarters into her pocket. He whines. "I'm the employer. You're down $3.50. Dad looked happier than he had in months. The calls from Luis stopped gradually. First there were practical texts about a sweater I had left at his place and a drill he had left at mine. Then there was one midnight message saying he hoped Dad was doing okay. I typed 6 different answers and sent, "He is. Hope you're good too." Luis replied with a heart. I stared at it the way I had once stared at Cousin Linda's message about Caleb being a blessing. Hearts were useful when words would expose too much. Dad's birthday invitation began as a list on the back of a pharmacy receipt. Not a big thing, he told me. Just family. He named 23 people. That is a big thing. It's not a wedding. You want a private room, a full dinner, and your cousin Ron flying in from Florida. Ron has miles. Ron also has opinions about airports. Talk to him early. I booked the steakhouse, arranged a fixed menu, called Ron again after he forgot the first conversation, and ordered the number balloons. Caleb volunteered to make a toast. "Of course you did," I said. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you enjoy a microphone." "There's no microphone. You'll find one." He asked me to help him remember a story about Dad repairing a washing machine during a snowstorm. "You were in college," I said. "No, I was there." "You called from college. Are you sure?" I held the flashlight. "That doesn't mean I wasn't there. It generally does." Caleb decided to use a different story. On the afternoon of the dinner, I left work early, picked up the cake, and collected Cousin Ron from the airport. Ron talked for the entire drive about baggage fees, municipal taxes, and a woman in 14C who had removed her shoes. I dropped him at his hotel, then drove to Dad's house. Denise's purple sneakers were by the door. She was helping Dad button a white shirt at the kitchen table. "I can do it," he insisted. "You've been doing the same button for 4 minutes," she said. I'm pacing myself. I set the cake in the refrigerator. Denise looked at me over Dad's shoulder. Something in her face made me pause. "What?" I asked. She finished the button. "Frank, did you tell her?" Dad concentrated on his cuff. "Tell me what?" "We're taking a break," he said. The same phrase he had used before. I looked at Denise. She reached for her jacket. "He asked me to finish this week. Why?" Dad pulled at his collar. "Because I don't need her anymore." Denise's mouth tightened, but she stayed quiet. "You love Denise." "I like Denise." "That's different from needing her." "Did something happen?" "No," Denise said. "Nothing happened." Dad glanced at the refrigerator. A new schedule was taped over the calendar I had made. Across the top, Caleb had written, "Family Care Plan," in large block letters. His name appeared beside Sunday afternoon and alternate Thursday evenings. My name filled Monday through Friday mornings, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, medication refills, groceries, laundry, and appointments. Dana's name was not on it. Neither was Denise's. I read it twice. Dad began working on his other cuff. "Caleb thinks we're paying for things family can do. Does Caleb know I stepped down from the regional team because I couldn't manage this schedule when it was smaller? That was your job decision." I turned toward him. "Did you ask me about any of this?" "We're asking now." "No, you're telling me. We can adjust the mornings if necessary." "Who is we?" "Your brother has it organized." I looked again at the calendar. Caleb had organized himself into 6 hours a week. Denise slipped on her jacket. "I'm going to go." "I'll walk you out," I said. On the porch, she zipped her jacket slowly. "I can keep coming," she said. I told him that. "I know. He's been asking about the cost. His pension covers it. He knows." I looked through the window. Dad was standing at the kitchen table, smoothing the front of his shirt. "Did Caleb talk to you?" "Last Sunday. Asked what I do here all morning." "What did you say?" "That depends on the morning." "And?" "He said family could probably take over." A car door slammed in the next driveway. Somewhere down the street, a leaf blower started. "I'm sorry," I said. "You don't owe me an apology." Denise touched my arm. "Don't let them call what you do free just because nobody sends an invoice." She walked to her car. I went back inside. Dad had moved to the bathroom mirror and was attempting to comb the back of his hair with his left hand. I took the comb from him. "I can do it. I know." I fixed the piece sticking up near his crown. In the mirror, he looked at me. "You're angry." "Yes." "Tonight isn't the night. Apparently tonight is the only night anyone made a schedule for. Caleb's trying to help. By assigning me work? He knows you're good at the medical things. Laundry isn't medical. You like things done a certain way." I laughed quietly. "There it is." "What? You make my competence sound like a preference." He turned around. "I don't want to fight on my birthday." Neither did I. That was another sentence our family used to turn timing into innocence. Not at dinner. Not before Christmas. Not while Dad was recovering. Not when Caleb was finally making an effort. There was always an occasion worth protecting from the truth. I went to the kitchen and removed the spare key from my ring. The pharmacy card was in my wallet because Dad had asked me to refill 2 prescriptions. His appointment list was folded in my planner. The emergency numbers and medication chart were already in my work tote. I found a plain white envelope in the drawer beside the refrigerator. Into it, I placed the key, the card, the lists, and a note written on the back of the new care schedule. I stated that Friday would be my last routine care day. I would answer genuine emergencies, but I would not take Denise's shifts, cover Caleb's missed visits, or accept assignments made without my consent. My hands shook so badly that I had to rewrite the note. I put the envelope in my purse. At the steakhouse, I seated Ron far from the air conditioning vent and helped Dad into his chair beneath the crooked gold balloons. Caleb arrived 10 minutes late carrying a bottle of bourbon and kissed Dad on both cheeks. "Birthday king," he said. Dad lit up. Dinner went smoothly until the plates were cleared. Then Caleb stood. I knew he planned to praise Dad. I did not know he planned to praise himself. When he called himself Dad's only caregiver, I looked at Dana. Her gaze dropped to her plate. Dad took Caleb's wrist and told the room that his son had put his whole life on hold. Everyone applauded. I wrote on the envelope and placed it beside Caleb's steak knife. He laughed and asked what it was. "Everything you need," I said. Dad warned me not to spoil his birthday. I kissed his temple and left. My phone began ringing before I reached the parking lot. Caleb, then Dad, then Caleb again. I sat behind the wheel with both hands wrapped around it while the restaurant windows glowed behind me. Through the glass, I could see people standing and turning toward the door. For once, I did not go back inside to make everyone comfortable. I switched off my phone and drove home. My apartment was exactly as I had left it. One lamp on, a clean mug drying beside the sink, Luis's drill still on the counter because neither of us had remembered it. The quiet felt accusatory. I placed my purse on the table without taking out the envelope, then remembered the envelope was gone. The absence of its weight startled me. For months I had carried Dad's pharmacy card, spare key, lists, receipts, and appointment notes everywhere. Now those things were sitting beside Caleb's dinner plate. My phone stayed off for 20 minutes, then 40. I poured a glass of wine and didn't drink it. I opened the refrigerator, looked at food, and closed it. At 11:30, I turned the phone back on. There were 14 missed calls. Caleb had left 6 voicemails. Dad had left 4. Cousin Linda had called twice. Ron had called from the hotel, which meant something truly historic had happened, because Ron believed every outgoing call endangered his retirement. Dana had sent one text. I'm assuming the envelope was not a birthday card. I sat at the kitchen table and listened to Dad's first voicemail. "Mara, this is ridiculous. Come back inside." The second was quieter. "You embarrassed your brother in front of everybody." The third came 27 minutes later. "I don't know why you always have to make things so dramatic." In the fourth, he sounded tired. "Call me when you get home so I know you're safe." That one almost did it. My thumb hovered over his name. I could call, tell him I was home, hear relief in his voice, and slide back into the familiar position where his concern for me erased what he had done to me. Instead, I texted, "Home safely." I meant what I wrote. "We can talk tomorrow." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Caleb's first voicemail began with laughter. "Okay, very funny. Call me." By the third, he had opened the envelope. "You can't just quit being somebody's daughter, Mara." In the fifth, he said, "Dad is really upset and everybody noticed, so congratulations." The sixth was only 8 seconds. "Friday? You're serious?" I put the phone face down. At midnight, Dana texted again. He just read the medication chart. "I don't think he knew Dad takes anything at dinner." I replied, "Yellow sticker." With food. She sent a thumbs up, then another message. "I'm not saying you were wrong." It was not the same as saying I was right, but it was more than anyone else had offered. I slept badly. In one dream, Dad was calling from a room with no doors. In another, I kept filling pill organizers, and every compartment opened into another empty compartment. At 6:20, I was awake before the alarm. Dad usually checked his blood sugar at 6:30. Denise arrived at 8, except Denise would not arrive. The thought moved through me with the force of a fire alarm. I got dressed. I carried my purse to the car. Halfway down the stairs, I stopped. Dad was competent. Caleb had the key. Dad could rehire Denise with a single phone call. No one was trapped except me, and I was standing there with my hand on the railing preparing to rebuild the trap. I went back upstairs. At 6:37, Dad called. I let it ring once before answering. "What's wrong? You tell me. You're the one who left in the middle of dinner. Is this an emergency? What kind of question is that, the kind I'm going to ask now?" He was silent. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Is your blood sugar dangerously high or low?" "I haven't checked it." "Then check it." "The monitor says error. Call Caleb." "He's asleep." "So was I." "You always know how to fix it." "Caleb has the instructions. You wrote 6 pages. It's 2 pages. Same difference." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "Dad, if you're having symptoms, call 911. If the monitor isn't working, call Caleb. If you want Denise back, her number is on the refrigerator and in the envelope. So that's it? That's the plan you and Caleb made. It wasn't supposed to mean you disappeared. I haven't disappeared. You called and I answered, but you won't come. Not for this. His breath moved heavily through the phone. You sound just like your mother when you get stubborn. Mom had not been stubborn. Mom had been outnumbered. Call Caleb. Dad hung up. At 7:15, Caleb called. What did you say to him? Good morning to you too. He's furious. Is his blood sugar okay? I don't know. I'm driving over there. Then you'll find out. I have to be at work at 8. I said nothing. Mara. Yes? You did this on purpose. I gave you notice. You gave me an envelope during a toast. The delivery was dramatic. The information was clear. You know, Monday mornings are bad for me. The schedule you wrote has my name on Monday morning. That was a draft. It was taped to Dad's refrigerator after Denise was fired. She wasn't fired. She won't be there today. This is insane. No, this is caregiving. He hung up. I stood alone in my kitchen, shaking. Part of me felt vindicated, which made me ashamed. I didn't want Dad confused. I didn't want Caleb late for work. I wanted them to understand what they had refused to see, and understanding apparently required that I stop preventing discomfort. At 8:42, Caleb sent a picture of Dad's glucose monitor. Why error? I zoomed in. The strip was inserted backward. Instructions are in the envelope, I replied. Just tell me, I typed, turn the strip around. 3 minutes later, he sent 128. Normal? He asked. I answered, yes. Then I went to work. Beth noticed I had silenced my phone. You okay? My family had a reorganization. That sounds peaceful. It was announced with an envelope. She gave me a long look, then said, conference room at 10. For 2 hours, I thought about something other than Dad. I trained a new scheduler, corrected an error in the monthly report, and drank coffee while it was still hot. At lunch, I checked my phone. Cousin Linda had written, your father says you've stopped helping him. I'm sure there are 2 sides, but after everything he's been through, maybe this could have been handled privately. I started to type a detailed response. I could list the appointments, meals, medication refills, canceled trips, and the job I had stepped away from. I could attach the schedule Caleb made. Instead, I wrote, I'm sure Dad would enjoy your call. She did not reply. Caleb managed Monday. He arrived late to work, returned to Dad's house at lunch with the wrong glucose strips, and drove back to exchange them. At 5, he called to ask where I bought Dad's low-sodium soup. Grocery store. Which one? The one near his house. I'm there. There are 11 kinds. Ask Dad. He says he doesn't remember. Blue label. Everything has a blue label. Then read the sodium. I don't have time to compare soup. I leaned back in my desk chair. That's what I used to do. You enjoy this, don't you? No. You sound like you do. I sound calm. You're used to calm meaning I'll solve it. A long pause followed. What should I buy? He asked. I told him. On Tuesday, Dad called at 6:31 and asked if I remembered the way Mom made pot roast. The question was so unexpected that I answered before asking whether it was an emergency. She browned it first. In the Dutch oven? Yes. She put those little onions in. Pearl onions. Denise always said they were too much trouble. Denise was right. Dad laughed softly. For a moment, I was sitting at Mom's kitchen table while she peeled onions and complained that nobody appreciated food requiring more than 1 pan. Then Dad said, you could make it Thursday. The memory closed like a door. No. Why not? Because I'm not cooking Thursday. You have to eat. I'm eating at my apartment. You could eat here. I could visit Sunday. Caleb's coming Sunday. Then I'll visit too. He already brings lunch. I'm not bringing lunch. Silence. What would you do here? Dad asked. See you. The idea seemed to confuse him. I'll let you know, he said. He did not let me know. Wednesday brought the pharmacy alert. One of Dad's prescriptions had no refills remaining. Normally, I would have called the doctor, waited through the hold music, and coordinated pickup. I forwarded the alert to Caleb. He replied, "What do I do?" I wrote, "Call the number. Can't you call?" "You know the office?" "No." That single word sat on the screen looking much harsher than it felt in my head. Caleb called immediately. "It's a phone call. Then make it. I'm on a job. I'm at work. You sit at a desk. You're doing this because of the toast. I'm doing this because of everything the toast erased." That was a speech. It was a claim. I was trying to say something nice about Dad. "You said you were his only caregiver. I got carried away," and he agreed. Dad was emotional. So was I. He lowered his voice. "What do you want, Mara? You want me to issue a correction to everybody who ate steak? I wanted you to tell the truth before I had to stop living the lie." He made a frustrated sound. "If the prescription runs out, is that dangerous?" "He has 4 days left." "How do you know?" "Because I filled the organizer Friday." The words landed between us. Caleb's voice changed. "You still went Friday?" I said Friday was my last day. "I thought you wrote that because it sounded official. I wrote it because it was Friday." He was quiet long enough that I could hear machinery in the background. "I'll call the doctor," he said. "Thank you. Don't thank me like I'm doing you a favor. Now you understand." He hung up. That evening, Dana called. Not Caleb. Dana. "I need to ask you something without you biting my head off. I make no promises. Is Frank safe?" The question softened me. Yes, he can call for help, make food, walk, and manage most things. He needs oversight, not 24-hour care. And Denise? He can afford her. How easily? Easily enough that nobody needs to donate their life. Dana exhaled. "Caleb told me Frank was worried about money. Dad is always worried about money. He keeps $20 in a coffee can because he doesn't trust ATMs, but he ordered a $400 recliner because it had a cup holder. That tracks. He fired Denise because relying on family makes him feel loved, and because family is free, that too." Dana was quiet. "I didn't know how much you were doing," she said. "You saw some of it. I saw enough to know. I didn't look hard because the arrangement worked for us. The honesty hurt less than an excuse would have." "Thank you for saying that. I'm not volunteering to replace you. I wouldn't let you." "Good, because Caleb suggested I stop by mornings." I closed my eyes. Of course he did. I told him I married a flooring installer, not a home health network. I laughed so suddenly I startled myself. When we hung up, the apartment felt a little less empty. Friday passed without a crisis. Caleb had found the refill, bought groceries, and learned the difference between Dad's morning and evening pills. Dad did not call me once. That should have felt like relief. Instead, I kept checking the screen. At 7 that night, a voicemail appeared without the phone ringing. Dad had called and hung up before I could answer. His message was brief. "I guess you're busy. Just wanted to hear your voice." I listened twice. Then I called him back. We talked about the weather, the Buckeyes, and a cabinet hinge that had started squeaking. I did not offer to fix it. Before we hung up, Dad said, "Your brother's exhausted. I'm sure. He has a lot on him." I looked at the dark window over my sink. "So did I said. Dad sighed as if I had dragged an argument into an otherwise pleasant call. I waited for him to answer. He never did. Sunday afternoon, I went to Dad's house with nothing in my hands. No groceries, no laundry detergent, no pharmacy bag tucked beneath my arm. I stood on the porch feeling as though I had forgotten to put on pants. Caleb opened the door. "You didn't bring lunch?" "Hello to you, too. I thought you always brought soup." "I'm not always anymore." He stepped aside. His hair was flattened on one side, and there was a dark stain on the front of his sweatshirt. "What happened to you?" "Dad wanted eggs." "That's eggs?" "It started as eggs." From the living room, Dad called, "She here?" I walked in. "Hi, Dad." He looked beyond me toward the doorway. "What?" "Nothing." "You're looking for a bag. I thought you might bring coffee." "You have coffee." "Not the good kind." I sat on the couch. "How are you feeling?" "Fine. How's your hand?" "Attached." "Good talk." The television was showing a golf tournament neither man cared about. Caleb went into the kitchen and began opening cabinets with increasing aggression. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Trying to figure out lunch." "You asked Dad what he wants?" "He wants pot roast." Dad raised one finger. I said pot roast would be nice. "It takes 4 hours," Caleb said. "Your sister can make it in 3. I kept my eyes on the television. "Your sister isn't making it." Dad lowered his finger. Caleb found a can of soup, checked the label, and looked at me. "What? Is this the right one? Ask the person eating it." "It's low sodium," Dad said with disgust. "Then it's right," Caleb said. He went back to the kitchen. I tried to talk to Dad about the game. He answered in one-word replies. When I asked whether he and Denise had finished the crossword from Friday, he changed the channel. After 10 minutes, he said, "The clean sheets are in the dryer." "Okay." "They'll wrinkle." "Probably." He looked at me. "You're just going to sit there?" "I came to visit." "What do you think a visit is?" "This. It doesn't feel like much." That hurt because he intended it to. I folded my hands in my lap. What would feel like a visit? You used to help out. Helping was the job. Visiting is the relationship. Sounds like something you read on a coffee mug. Caleb returned carrying 2 bowls. "Can we not do this?" Dad took one. "I'm not doing anything." "I know," I said. Caleb shot me a warning look. I stayed for an hour. We watched the end of the golf tournament. Dad complained about the announcers. Caleb washed the pan he had ruined and left it soaking when the burned egg refused to come loose. When I stood to leave, Dad looked genuinely surprised. "You just got here. I've been here an hour. What are you doing after this?" "Going home." "To do what?" "I don't know yet." He looked offended by the existence of time that had no family assignment. Caleb followed me to the porch. That was rough. I thought it went pretty well. You let him eat canned soup. He can eat canned soup. He wanted pot roast. I want a paid-off mortgage and stronger knees. Caleb shoved his hands into his sweatshirt pockets. "The laundry's piling up." "Then do laundry. I've been here every day." "Welcome." "I have a job." "So do I." Dad doesn't like the way I fold his shirts. Neither does he. He says you know how. I fold them the same way. Then why does he complain? Because you're still doing it. Caleb stared at me. I could see the idea arrive and offend him. "Are you saying he does this on purpose?" "Not like a plan. It's just how he keeps us near him. That's messed up. It also works." Through the screen door, Dad called, "Caleb, did you leave the milk out?" Caleb turned toward the sound automatically. I touched his arm. "You can put it back without apologizing." He looked at me as if I had given him instructions in another language. The following Saturday was the first one in almost a year that belonged entirely to me. No appointments, no grocery trip, no meal preparation, no reason to drive toward Dad's exit. I woke at 6:20 anyway. By 8, I had cleaned my kitchen, reorganized the bathroom cabinet, and started a load of laundry that contained only my clothes. At 9:30, I caught myself standing in the hallway with my keys. I had nowhere to go. Freedom was less like flying and more like being handed an unfamiliar appliance without instructions. Luis's drill still sat on the kitchen counter. I texted him and asked when I could drop it off. He answered immediately. Home until noon. His apartment looked the same except for the plant I had bought him, which had grown toward the window. Luis took the drill and held it between us like a ceremonial object. "I forgot you had this." So did I. We stood in the doorway. "How's Frank?" "Mad." "At the drill?" "At me." Luis nodded slowly. "You finally said no. How did you know?" "You're standing here at 10 on a Saturday." I looked down the hallway behind him. I should have said it before. Probably. "I'm sorry." "I know. No, I mean for making you wait around while I decided everyone else's needs were real and ours were flexible." He leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. "Thank you," he said. I wanted him to invite me inside. I also knew that if he did, I might treat the invitation as proof that one apology could restore everything. He didn't. "I hope you figure out what to do with your Saturdays," he said. "So do I." On the drive home, I passed a small art studio that advertised a beginner pottery class. Mom had taken one years ago and produced 3 bowls that leaned visibly to the left. Dad called them her drunk bowls. She used them for peanuts until she died. I circled the block and went inside. The woman at the counter asked whether I had experience. I watched someone make a bowl once. That qualifies you to watch yourself make a worse one. I signed up for Tuesday nights. Dad called while I was filling out the form. I stepped outside before answering, then stopped with my thumb above the screen. The call ended. He called again. I answered. Is this an emergency? I hate when you say that. What's wrong? Caleb bought the wrong coffee. I laughed before I could stop myself. Dad did not. It tastes burned. Tell Caleb. He says it's the same kind. Then maybe it's the coffee maker. I cleaned it. When? I ran water through it. That isn't cleaning it, so come show him. No. You're 5 minutes away. I looked through the studio window at a shelf of crooked bowls. I'm 26 minutes away. You know what I mean. I'm not coming over for coffee. His voice sharpened. You've made your point. This isn't a point. It's a boundary. Another coffee mug. Maybe I'll make you one. He hung up. On Tuesday night, I sat at a pottery wheel with 6 strangers and turned a lump of clay into something resembling a collapsed hat. The instructor, a woman named Patrice, leaned over my shoulder. You're trying to control it too much. I looked at her. Sorry, she said. People hate that sentence. No, it's just impressively on the nose. My phone stayed in my purse for 90 minutes. When class ended, there were 3 missed calls from Caleb and 1 from Dad. I called Caleb from the parking lot. What happened? Where were you? Class. What class? What happened, Caleb? Dad won't rehire Denise. That isn't an emergency. It is to me. I sat in my car without starting it. He says he doesn't need her, but he complains about everything I do. I made him chicken. He said it was dry. I took him to the pharmacy. He said I parked too far away. He called you twice while I was standing there. What do you want me to do? Talk to him. I have. No, make him understand. A laugh escaped me. What's funny? You want me to manage him because managing him is exhausting you. I'm asking for help. So ask for the right help. Tell him you can't cover Denise's shifts. He'll say I don't care. He'll be wrong. You say that like it's easy. I didn't say it was easy. Caleb breathed into the phone. I'm sorry about the toast, he said abruptly. I went still. He continued before I could answer. I shouldn't have said only caregiver. No, I meant I was the only son. That would have been a strange toast. You know what I mean. I was talking. Everybody was looking at me. Dad was happy. And you liked it? Yeah, he said. I liked it. The honesty loosened something in me. Thank you for saying that. So, can you talk to him? No. Oh, come on. Your apology can't be a coupon. I wasn't, you were. He swore under his breath. Tell Dad you can do Sundays in one evening. Tell him he needs Denise for the rest. What if he refuses? Then don't fill the rest. That's what you did. Yes. And now everybody's miserable. Not everybody. I looked through the windshield at the studio. Patrice was locking the front door. My collapsed clay hat sat inside on a shelf, waiting to dry. Caleb gave a humorless laugh. Glad pottery's going well. Good night. Dad left me a voicemail that said only, Your brother is having a hard time. I deleted it. 2 days later, my phone rang during lunch. Dad's name flashed across the screen. I answered with my usual question. His voice was weak and slightly slurred. I'm fine, he said. Every muscle in my body tightened. What's your blood sugar? I don't know. Check it. I dropped the monitor. Where's Caleb? Working. Did you eat lunch? I wasn't hungry. Dad, sit down, right now. I am sitting. I was already grabbing my purse. Do you have glucose tablets? In the basket. Take 4. Stay on the phone. He fumbled with the container. I heard tablets spill onto the floor. Dad, I've got them. I drove with the phone on speaker, listening to him chew. I called Caleb from my second line and told him to meet me there. Dad was pale when I arrived, but alert. His glucose was low, not catastrophic. I made him drink orange juice and eat peanut butter crackers while Caleb rushed in 10 minutes later, still wearing his work boots. "What happened?" Caleb asked. He skipped lunch. Dad frowned at me. I lost track of time. "You were punishing us," I said. "I was not. You don't get hungry, so you expect somebody to appear and feed you. That's not what happened." Caleb checked the refrigerator. "There's food everywhere." I waited until Dad's number came up, then wrote it on the pad beside his chair. "You should stay," Caleb told me. "I have work. You just got here." "He's stable." Dad looked away. I crouched in front of him. "I will come for emergencies, I told you that." His eyes met mine. "But I'm not staying to do the laundry." I stood, picked up my purse, and walked toward the door. Behind me, Caleb said, "You heard her. Eat lunch or I'm buying you 12 cans of low-sodium soup." Dad muttered something rude. Caleb laughed. So did I. Then I left them there together. Caleb bought 12 cans of low-sodium soup. He lined them across Dad's counter like a warning. Dad called me that evening to report the threat. He bought tomato, he said. "You know, tomato gives me heartburn. Then eat the chicken. There are only 4 chicken." "Pace yourself. This isn't funny, it's a little funny." He lowered his voice. "Your brother's becoming controlling." I looked at the phone. "Dad, you wrote my name on a schedule without asking me. That was different." "How?" "You know what I like. So does Caleb. He just assumed what you like was deli meat." Dad grumbled something about sons not being raised to notice details. "Who raised him?" I asked. He hung up. Caleb set alarms on Dad's phone for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and medication. Dad deleted 2 because he said no machine was going to tell him when to eat. Caleb restored them. Dad changed the alarm sound to a duck quacking. For the next week, every meal began with Dad swearing at a duck. It was not a good system, but it was a system Caleb had made. He also arranged grocery delivery. The first order contained 6 pounds of bananas because he had entered 6 bunches instead of 6 bananas. "Potassium," he told me when I stopped by Sunday. Dad pointed at the fruit bowl. "Nobody needs that much potassium." Dana took 2 bunches home. Caleb left one on a neighbor's porch. Dad spent the rest of the week telling people his house smelled like a monkey exhibit. I visited without bringing anything. Dad tested the boundary by mentioning an empty laundry basket, a squeaking hinge, and a strange spot inside the microwave. I acknowledged each item with the calm interest of someone touring a museum. "You're not even going to look?" he asked. "You just showed me. Your mother would have cleaned it. Mom also would have told you to cover your soup." He did not like that answer, but he handed me the remote and let me choose a movie. Halfway through, he fell asleep with his mouth open. I pulled the throw blanket over his legs. For a while, I watched him instead of the screen. His face at rest looked more like the man who had taught me to change a tire in a rainstorm and waited outside my first apartment until I found the right key. I missed that man even while sitting 3 feet from him. When Dad woke, he caught me looking. "What?" "Nothing." Did I snore? Like a bear with seasonal allergies? "Your mother said it was soothing. Mom slept with earplugs." He smiled. Then he noticed the blanket and tucked it more tightly around himself. Pottery class became the one place where no one benefited from my competence, because I had none. My second bowl collapsed more symmetrically than the first. Patrice called that progress. I kept my phone in my purse. Caleb complained about it every Tuesday. What if something happens? Call 911. What if it isn't that serious? Then it can wait 90 minutes. Dad hates waiting. Pottery is teaching me to tolerate disappointment. Your bowl looks like an ashtray. It's not done. It's been through a kiln. It's done. I gave the first crooked bowl to Dana. She filled it with mince and put it on her desk. "I love it," she said. "It leans. So does your family." She was joking, but her smile faded quickly. "What?" I asked. We were sitting in her car outside Dad's house. Caleb had gone inside to replace a bathroom light bulb Dad claimed was flickering. The bulb was not flickering when we arrived. "Caleb's worn out," she said. "I know. He comes home angry, but not at Frank. Somehow Frank gets a pass and the rest of us get the weather." I'm sorry. I'm not blaming you. Caleb is. He has moments. He called my pottery an ashtray. It does have an ashtray quality. Thank you. Dana turned the little bowl in her hands. He didn't understand what you were doing. Neither did I. Now you do. Now I understand why you were always tired. The porch light switched on, then off, then on again. Caleb was testing the bulb for a man who would insist the first 2 tests had been insufficient. Dana sighed. I told him he has to choose actual days, no more being on call every day and resenting everybody for it. What did he say? That Dad might need him. What did you say? So might I. I looked at her. She tapped one fingernail against the bowl. He heard me. I don't know what he's going to do with it yet. The following Sunday, Cousin Linda arrived at Dad's house carrying a chicken casserole and the confidence of someone who had read 3 group texts. Dad greeted her like visiting royalty. Linda came all the way from Westerville, he told me. It was a 30-minute drive. Linda set the casserole on the counter. Family takes care of family. That smells great, I said. She blinked, having expected resistance. For the first hour, Dad was charming. He showed her how much strength had returned to his hand. He told the hardware store story with enough jokes to make the stroke seem like a quirky customer service experience. Then he asked Linda to adjust the thermostat. 2 minutes later, he said it was too cold. She changed it back. He asked for coffee, rejected the mug she chose, and requested a different chair because the kitchen one pressed against his back. When she offered casserole, he said he had already eaten. You said you were hungry, she reminded him. I said I could eat. Linda looked at me. I smiled pleasantly. Dad asked whether she had brought bread. She had not. I thought Mara would, he said. I'm not on bread, I told him. Linda stayed 2 hours. As she put on her coat, Dad handed her an empty plastic container and said she could bring more casserole in it next time. Outside, she turned to me. He's a little demanding. He's having a good day. I can see why you needed a break. It isn't a break. She nodded without understanding. Still, he misses you. I visit every Sunday. He misses how things were. So do I. They're not coming back. Linda looked toward the house. Your mom always handled him. Yes. And then you. Yes. The simple sequence seemed to disturb her. She carried the empty container to her car. She never apologized for her text, but the family messages stopped. Dad's condition did not dramatically worsen. That made the next crisis harder to understand. Nothing had happened, he kept insisting afterward. He had simply stopped drinking enough water. Dad disliked getting up to use the bathroom, especially at night, so he began limiting fluids without telling anyone. He also turned off the meal alarms because the duck irritated him. Caleb thought Dad was eating. Dad thought Caleb was hovering. Both responded by communicating less. On Wednesday, Dad did not answer Caleb's afternoon call. Caleb was installing flooring across town and assumed he was napping. He called again at 6. Still no answer. At 6:15, my phone rang. I was glazing my 3rd bowl. Mara, I can't reach him. I set down the brush. Go over. I'm 40 minutes away. So am I. You're closer. I'm not. The studio's in Grandview. Can you just go? The old reflex rose so fast it made me dizzy. Call the neighbor with the key, I said. What neighbor? The Hendersons. Their number's on the emergency list. You have their number? You have the list. There was a pause as he searched. Mr. Henderson found Dad sitting on the bathroom floor, conscious but too weak to stand. He called an ambulance. By the time Caleb and I reached the emergency room, Dad had an IV in his arm and enough energy to complain about the blanket. They think dehydration, Caleb said in the hallway. How long? They don't know. Did he take his medication? I don't know. You've been checking. I can't watch him swallow. I didn't say you could. You're saying something. I'm asking questions. You always ask questions like there's a correct answer, and I chose the stupid one. A nurse stepped around us carrying a tray. We moved closer to the wall. I lowered my voice. He should never have fired Denise. You think I don't know that? Then rehire her. He won't. You can't force him. But you could. I stared at him. Caleb's face was red. There was adhesive on one sleeve of his work shirt. He listens to you, he said. He calls me controlling. Because you make him do things. You stood beside him while he fired her. I made a mistake, so did Dad, and you're letting him pay for it. The words hit so cleanly that I stepped back. I came, I said, after he was on a bathroom floor. No, after someone called me. The same way you came. You knew he couldn't handle this. He can make decisions. He chose no aid. You knew what would happen. I knew it would be harder. I didn't know he'd stop drinking water. You knew enough. Dad's voice came from behind the curtain. If you two are going to fight, go home. We entered together. He looked pale and annoyed, his hair flattened on one side. The IV bag hung above him. Happy? He asked me. What? You proved your point. I could not believe it. You think I wanted this. You wanted consequences. I wanted consent. Caleb rubbed both hands over his face. Can we not do vocabulary? A doctor kept Dad overnight. His kidneys were fine. There was no new stroke, no infection, no heart problem. He needed fluids, regular meals, and someone checking that he was actually following the plan rather than saying he was. The next morning, a discharge nurse asked who would stay with him for the first 24 hours. Dad looked at me. So did Caleb. I can't, I said. Caleb gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Of course. I have work, and so do you. I already missed yesterday afternoon. So arrange paid help. Dad's mouth tightened. I don't need paid help. Then stay another night. This isn't a hotel. The nurse looked between us, wisely silent. Caleb said, Mara has a spare room. No. Dad flinched. The word hurt him. I saw it. I still did not take it back. You want me to recover at a stranger's house? He asked. I want you to recover in your house with qualified help. Denise may come back if you ask her. If she can't, we hire someone else. And if I refuse, you're allowed to refuse care. You're not allowed to replace it with my life. Caleb stood so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. You make everything sound like a contract. No, I'm making it sound like a choice. He's your father, and you're his only caregiver, remember? His face changed. The line was cruel. I knew it before I finished saying it. Caleb walked out. Dad turned toward the window. The nurse quietly placed the discharge papers on the table and said she would give us time. I sat beside the bed. Dad did not look at me. After a long silence, he said, Your mother would have taken me home. I stared at his profile. Mom is dead, I said, and she was tired. Dad's jaw worked before any words came out. Don't talk about your mother like that. Like what? Like she resented me. I didn't say she resented you. You said she was tired. She was. She was sick. I mean, before she got sick. He turned from the window. You don't know what was between us. No, I know what was around you. His eyes narrowed. I know Mom kept a list in the kitchen because if she didn't, nobody remembered what needed doing. I know you called it her list even when half of it was for you. I know Caleb forgot things and you explained him. I know I remembered things and you gave me more. This has nothing to do with your brother. It has everything to do with him. Caleb has always needed more encouragement, and I needed less work. Dad looked toward the curtain, perhaps hoping the nurse would return and interrupt us. No one did. You make it sound like we used you. I stared at the tape holding his IV in place. I don't think you sat down and planned it, I said. I think you loved me in the way that was most convenient for everybody. His face went still. There are sentences that feel powerful while you are carrying them and terrible once they have somewhere to land. I stood. I'm going to find Caleb. Dad looked back toward the window. He's probably gone. He'll come back. You seem very sure. He always comes back after the worst part is over. I found Caleb outside near a concrete planter, smoking a cigarette. He had quit 8 years earlier. You smell terrible, I said. So did your comment. I'm sorry. He looked at me. The only caregiver line, I said. It was cruel. You meant it. I meant the reference. I didn't mean you should do this alone. Could have fooled me. You shouldn't do it alone. Neither should I. He took one more drag and crushed the cigarette beneath his boot. What happens now? Dad hires help. He'll fight it. Then we let him fight. Yeah, you're good at that. No, I'm new at it. Caleb laughed without humor and looked through the hospital windows. I thought he was dead when Henderson called. I know. I kept thinking he'd hit his head and been there all day. He didn't. He could have. Yes. Caleb shoved both hands into his pockets. And you can just walk away from that? No. I walk around with it everywhere. I just don't let it choose for me anymore. That sounds like pottery class nonsense. It probably is. He glanced at me. You really like pottery? No, I'm awful at it. That earned a real laugh, brief but recognizable. We went back inside together. Dad agreed to call Denise only after we made it clear that neither of us would make the call for him. He picked up his phone, muttered that we had turned healthcare into blackmail, and asked her to return. Denise must have answered on the first ring. Hello, Dad said. Apparently I require supervision. Even from across the room, I heard her voice. Is that an apology or a job offer? Dad closed his eyes. A job offer. Try again. Caleb bit the inside of his cheek. I looked at the floor. Dad inhaled through his nose. I made a mistake when I canceled. Denise said something we could not hear. Yes, Dad replied. Both mornings and evenings for a while. Another pause. Yes, I know it costs more. He looked directly at me. No, Mara is not forcing me. His expression promised we would revisit that sentence later. Denise agreed to meet us at the house when he was discharged. She could stay through dinner, but not overnight. Caleb volunteered for the night. I offered to bring breakfast, then caught myself. I can visit in the morning, I corrected. Dad gave me a bitter little smile. Without food? With coffee? The good kind? Yes. He looked away before I could tell whether the offer pleased him. Caleb drove Dad home. I followed because the discharge nurse wanted someone to carry the bags, and because boundaries had not cured me of love. Denise was already there when we arrived. She had changed from purple sneakers to red ones and brought a large plastic water bottle marked with lines for each hour. Dad examined it. I'm not drinking out of a motivational jug. It isn't motivational, Denise said. It's surveillance. She placed it beside his chair. Caleb laughed. Dad did not, but he drank. I put the discharge papers on the kitchen table. The old family care schedule was still taped to the refrigerator. Someone had crossed out my name on Monday and written Caleb, then crossed out Caleb and written Ask Dana. Dana had added no beneath it in black marker. I took the schedule down and folded it. Caleb watched me. What are you doing? Removing fiction. Dad lowered himself into his recliner. Leave it. We'll need a schedule. Denise has one. She's not here all day. Then you can decide what you're willing to pay for the uncovered hours. Dad's eyes sharpened. You're enjoying spending my money. No, easy to say when it isn't yours. Caleb set the overnight bag near the couch. Dad, stop. Dad turned on him. You know what this costs? She wants nearly double for evenings. She's giving up her evenings. People used to help neighbors. She isn't your neighbor. She's practically family now. Denise called from the kitchen. Family doesn't get an hourly rate. That's why Mara quit. Dad looked offended. I almost hugged her. Instead, I kissed Dad's cheek and left before he could assign me breakfast. The new arrangement lasted because money created clarity where affection had failed. Denise came every weekday morning and 3 evenings. On the other evenings, Caleb stopped by twice, and Dad managed alone twice. He had meals delivered, alarms restored, and a water bottle he continued to insult while drinking from it. The cost bothered him more than the help. He began turning lights off behind people. He complained when Denise used too much laundry detergent. He asked me whether aides charged while Dad was in the bathroom. That's not how hourly work works, I told him. She's sitting there. She's waiting for you. I don't pay the barber while I walk to the chair. You do, actually. It's built into the haircut. Dad scowled. Everybody has an answer when it's somebody else's money. One Sunday, Caleb brought brochures for 2 senior communities. Dad refused to touch them. I'm not moving into a home. They're apartments, Caleb said, with old people. You're 76. I don't want to live with people who talk about their medication. All 3 of us looked at the yellow stickered bottles lined across his counter. That's different, he said. Caleb opened a brochure to a photograph of a dining room. They cook. They drive you to appointments. They have physical therapy. They also have beige carpeting. Your entire house is beige. This is my beige. I sat at the table, turning my lopsided coffee mug between my palms. Dad pointed at me. Why aren't you arguing? You're allowed to say no. Caleb threw the brochure down. He can't keep saying no to everything. He can if he accepts what the remaining choices cost. Dad looked from him to me. I can stay here, he said. We just figured it out. For now, Caleb replied. For as long as I decide. The room tightened. Caleb's shoulders sagged. I can't keep doing 4 nights a week. You said 2. I'm here 4. I never asked for 4. You call me if I'm not here. That doesn't mean you have to come. Caleb looked at me as if asking whether I heard the insanity. I did. Dad's right, I said. Both of them turned toward me. Calling isn't the same as needing, I said. You can answer without coming. Dad nodded, pleased to have won something. Unless it is a need, Caleb said, then Dad can say what he needs. He doesn't. That's not our job to translate forever. Dad pushed himself upright. I'm sitting right here. Then tell Caleb what you actually need, I said. I need everybody to stop deciding my life. Good. That includes deciding how much of ours belongs to you. He stared at me. Caleb picked up the brochures and shoved them back into the envelope they came in. This is pointless. He left before lunch. Dad blamed me. You always know exactly where to poke him. He brought the brochures. Because he's worried. So am I. You don't act like it. I looked down at the mug I had made. The handle was slightly too small, and the glaze had pooled dark blue around the base. What would worry look like to you? Not this. This is me visiting. You're watching me make mistakes. No, I'm letting you make decisions. Dad's mouth twisted. Another distinction. Yes. He stared at the television without turning it on. After a while, he said, The house is the last thing that's still mine. I looked around the living room. Mom's old clock ticked above the mantel. The recliner had been moved nearer the bathroom. A walker stood folded behind the couch in case he needed it again. I know. I fixed everything in this place myself. I know. Your mother chose those curtains. She hated those curtains. She chose them. She chose them because they were on sale. Dad's mouth moved, almost a smile. I'm not leaving, he said. Okay, don't tell your brother I'm considering it. I looked at him. Are you? No. That wasn't my question. He picked up the blue mug, examined the crooked handle, and took a sip. It leaks, he said. It does not. He ran one finger beneath the base. Condensation. It's hot coffee. Then it's something. He drank from it again. Work settled into a quieter shape. Beth gave me responsibility for redesigning the local training schedule, which involved no travel and slightly less pay than the regional role. I was good at it. I tried not to treat good enough as failure. My phone stayed in my purse during pottery. Caleb and I spoke less. When we did, our conversations were practical and sharp-edged. He sent glucose numbers without comment. I answered with a thumbs up. He stopped asking me which soup to buy. 3 weeks after Dad came home from the hospital, Caleb appeared at my apartment at 9 on a Thursday night. He held the white envelope from the birthday dinner. It was bent at the corners and thicker than before. Receipts, appointment cards, and folded notes bulged from the opening. I can't do this, he said. I looked at the envelope, then at him. I'm not taking it back. I'm not asking you to. You're holding it out. I didn't know where else to put it. He looked exhausted. Not Sunday afternoon tired. Not poor me tired. His face had the gray, stretched look I remembered from Mom's last months. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. Caleb placed the envelope on my kitchen table. A grocery receipt slid out and fluttered to the floor. He bent to pick it up, missed, and left it there. "Do you want coffee?" I asked. "No." "Tea?" "No." "Low-sodium soup?" He looked at me. "Sorry. No, that was pretty good." I poured us both water. Caleb sat with his forearms on the table and stared at the envelope as though it had followed him home. "I've started putting everything in there," he said. "Dad's receipts, medication stuff, phone numbers. I know that's not a system. It's technically a container. I missed his neurology appointment. My glass stopped halfway to the table. When? Yesterday. Did you reschedule? Yes. Then it's handled. He called me at 9 asking where I was. I thought it was next Wednesday. He was dressed and sitting on the porch. I sat across from him. Was he angry? He said no, which means he'll tell the story at every holiday until one of us dies. Probably. I had it in my phone. I put it on the wrong Wednesday. I did that with Mom's lab appointment once. Caleb looked up. You did? Yes. You never told anybody. There was nothing to tell. I rescheduled. He rubbed his eyes. I thought you didn't make mistakes. Why? Because Dad doesn't talk about yours. He doesn't notice mine because I fix them before they inconvenience him. Caleb leaned back. That's worse, he said. I know. The apartment hummed around us. The refrigerator motor switched off. Pipes knocked somewhere in the wall. What happened with Dana? I asked. His gaze dropped. She told me not to come home until I could speak to her without making her responsible for my mood. That sounds like Dana. She said I walk through the door carrying Dad, then get mad because she won't help me set him down. That also sounds like Dana. I told her she didn't understand. Bold choice. Yeah. He rotated his water glass between both hands. I've been late to work 6 times. Darren's covering for me, but he's getting sick of it. Dad calls during jobs. If I don't answer, he calls again. If I do answer, it's because he can't find the cable bill or wants to know whether Denise moved the cinnamon. The cinnamon moves a lot. He complains about her, then panics if she's 10 minutes late. Yes. And when I tell him I can't come, he says, don't worry, I'll manage. Yes, it makes me feel like garbage. Yes. Caleb's head came up. Could you use a different word? No. He gave a tired laugh and drank his water. I keep thinking about that toast, he said. So do I. I wasn't trying to erase you. You were trying to enlarge yourself. I got erased because I was standing behind you. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Dad had been telling people I was the one keeping him at home. I liked hearing it. Every time he said it, I thought, okay, finally. He sees me as the one he can count on. I looked at the envelope. He always counted on you for things he enjoyed, I said. That's not trust. He praised you and called you. The sentence landed softly. Caleb leaned forward. When Mom got sick, I knew you were doing more. I also knew they expected you to. Whenever I offered, Dad gave me one simple thing, like bringing flowers. You got the appointments, the doctors, the bills. You missed the things you did get. I know. Then they stopped giving you more. I know that too. I studied his face. For years, I had believed Caleb lived in the favored position without cost. Maybe he had. But favor and trust were not the same currency, and Dad had kept us both hungry by paying each of us in only one. I thought you had what I wanted, Caleb said. What? They trusted you with real life. I wanted them to be happy when I walked into a room. He smiled sadly. They were relieved. That isn't the same. No. We sat with that. Then Caleb touched the envelope. I can't be the only caregiver. You aren't. I know, but I made everybody think I could be. Then stop performing it. And do what? Choose what you can actually do. He began listing tasks as if I had asked for a confession. Sundays. One evening. Emergency calls if he was not working. Home repairs that were genuinely repairs, not light bulbs Dad wanted admired. Good, I said. And you? I visit Sunday. I can take one appointment a month if it's scheduled with me first. Genuine emergencies. That's less than me. Yes. He frowned. I'm not dividing the punishment evenly, I said. I already did more than you for years. I'm choosing what I can give without hating both of you. That sounds unfair. It is unequal. Unequal isn't always unfair. You got that from your coffee mug. Pottery. He looked around. Where are all these mugs? Most of them are structurally dangerous. His smile faded. What about the rest? He asked. Paid help. Dad says he can't afford Denise forever. He can. What if he needs more? Then the house may have to be part of the plan. Caleb's fingers stopped on the envelope. There it was. I waited. He looked toward the dark window. You know, I always figured the house would stay with me, he said. No, I figured you figured that. Dad talked about it. Not like paperwork, just... I'm the one who knows the furnace, the yard, all that. You called me last winter because you didn't know where the furnace filter went. That's not the point. What is? He exhaled. Mom's gone. If Dad sells that house, that's it. That's not it. We still exist. You know what I mean. I do. But you also mean you expected to inherit it. He did not deny it. And if Dad spends money on care, I continued, there's less left. That sounds bad when you say it. It sounded fine while my unpaid labor was protecting it. I didn't think of it that way. You canceled Denise because family could handle it. I was family. You kept yourself on 2 afternoons and put me everywhere else. If that worked for 5 years, Dad kept the house. You inherited it. And I paid for it with time. Caleb's face reddened. I wasn't planning some scam. I know. I would have shared things with you. Things? Mom's furniture? Whatever you wanted? I laughed once. What? You were going to give me a lamp in exchange for 5 years. That isn't what I said. It's what the math says. He stood and walked to the sink. For a second, I thought he would leave. Instead, he turned around. If the house goes, what was all this for? The question came out small. I looked at him. It was supposed to be for Dad. Caleb closed his eyes. I had wanted him to understand. Watching it happen brought no pleasure. I'm sorry, he said. This apology sounded different from the one in the pottery parking lot. It had nowhere to go. It asked for nothing. I'm sorry I took the credit. I'm sorry I let him treat your life like the free option. And I'm sorry I didn't look at it because looking would have cost me something. I swallowed. Thank you. He returned to the table but did not sit. Are we okay? No. He nodded. But we're more honest. I guess that's something. It's expensive. That almost made him smile. He left the envelope on my table. I carried it to the door and placed it in his hands. This is yours. What am I supposed to do with it? Make a better system. He looked down at it. You really won't take it? No. All right. At the bottom of the stairs, he turned. I'm going to tell Dad the house should pay for his care if it has to. He'll blame me. I'll tell him it was my idea. He'll still blame me. Probably. Dad blamed me. We met at his house Sunday with Dana, Denise, and 2 printed care schedules. Caleb had transferred everything from the envelope into a binder with labeled tabs. The labels were crooked, but they existed. Dad opened the binder. What's this? A system, Caleb said. I had a system. You had Mara. Dad glanced at me. Caleb continued before he could answer. I can do Sunday and Wednesday evening. Mara can do Sunday visits and 1 appointment a month if she agrees. Denise stays on weekdays. We add evening help if you need more. And who pays for that? You. Dad closed the binder. No. Caleb sat straighter. Then we look at the senior apartments. No. Or sell the house and pay for more help here until you decide. Dad's face changed. I knew that expression. Caleb knew it too. It was the look Dad used when affection was about to be withdrawn. So this is what you've been discussing behind my back. We discussed what we can do, Caleb said. She discussed what you can do. No. Mara didn't want me to come here 4 nights a week. Dad looked at me. That's generous. She said I should choose what I can do without hating everybody. Very therapeutic. It's true. And the house? Dad asked. Was selling that her idea, too? Caleb hesitated. I watched the old instinct fight across his face. Let me take the blame. Keep Dad's approval. Preserve his position. Then Caleb pushed the binder toward him. The house is yours. Your care should come out of your money and your property before it comes out of our lives. Dad looked as though Caleb had struck him. I was keeping that house for this family. No, Caleb said. You were keeping it for me. Dana's head turned toward him. Dad's mouth tightened. You're my son. And Mara's your daughter. I know who she is. Then stop charging her more. Silence filled the kitchen. Denise stood at the counter pretending to study the water bottle. Dad turned to me. You got what you wanted? I shook my head. I wanted you to ask. Ask what? What we can give. Not decide. I raised both of you. With Mom. I worked. So do we. He slapped one hand against the binder. Everything is an invoice with you now. No. An invoice has an agreed price. You never told me what this would cost. Dad pushed back from the table. I'm not selling. Caleb nodded. Then don't. I'm not moving. Then don't. And I'm not paying strangers to sit around while my family has free evenings. Dana spoke for the first time. Our evenings aren't free, Frank. Dad looked at her, surprised. She folded her hands on the table. They belong to us. Caleb reached for her hand. Dad stood. Meeting over. He went into the living room and turned the television loud enough to end conversation throughout the house. No decision had been made, yet something fundamental had changed. Caleb did not follow him in to apologize. The next week, he kept to Sunday and Wednesday. When Dad called on Thursday because the kitchen light seemed dim, Caleb told him to use the lamp until Denise arrived. Dad called me. I told him the same thing. On Friday, he called the senior community from the brochure and scheduled a tour. He told Caleb it was only to prove how terrible it was. He told me I was not invited. After the tour, he called me from the parking lot. The carpeting is gray, he said. Better than beige? Marginally. I waited. They have a woodworking room. You hate woodworking. I hate amateur woodworking. Of course. And the apartments have kitchenettes. That sounds useful. They showed me one facing the courtyard. I sat down at my desk. What did you think? He was quiet for a long moment. I think your mother would have liked the windows, he said. That isn't what I asked, I said. I know. Did you like the apartment? It had advantages. Such as? The windows. You mentioned those. The dining room has real silverware. Was that in doubt? Some places use plastic cups. Did this one? No. So that's another advantage. Dad sighed. I shouldn't have called you. You called because you wanted to talk. I called because Caleb drives like he's fleeing something. From somewhere near Dad's phone, Caleb said, I can hear you. I know. Dad did not sign anything that day. He brought the brochure home, set it beside his chair, and complained about the price for 2 weeks. The price included meals, transportation, housekeeping, medication reminders, and people trained to notice if he stopped appearing for breakfast. It cost more than Denise's morning schedule and less than piecing together the amount of help he would eventually need at home. Dad compared the monthly fee to his first mortgage payment. Your first mortgage bought a house in 1978, I told him. You also made $7 an hour, $8.50, a fortune. It was good money. Then pay with that. He did not appreciate financial advice from someone who had spent $6 making a crooked mug. Denise took him back for lunch. She claimed she wanted to inspect the competition, but I knew she was giving him a second visit without either of his children watching his reaction. They ate roast chicken. Dad joined a card game because someone needed a fourth. He came home with $3 in quarters and accused a retired dental hygienist named Gloria of reneging. Sounds like you had fun, I said. I lost. You do understand those aren't opposites. She deals from the bottom. Maybe don't play with her again. I have to. She has my $3. The brochure moved from beside the chair to the kitchen table. Then it disappeared. I found it in the bathroom magazine rack, which meant Dad was reading it in private. He still refused to discuss moving. Caleb obeyed the new schedule. On Thursdays, when Dad called, Caleb answered but did not come unless something was actually wrong. The first time he stayed home, he called me afterward. He said, "Never mind. I'll figure it out," and hung up. What did he need? Batteries for the remote. Did he figure it out? He took them from the clock. That's resourceful. Now the clock is dead. He'll figure that out next. Caleb was learning that Dad's disappointment could be survived. Dad was learning that helplessness was less rewarding when nobody rushed toward it. The lessons made both of them irritable. One Sunday, Dad announced he had put down a deposit on the courtyard apartment. He did it while spreading cream cheese on a bagel, as if mentioning a dentist appointment. Caleb stopped chewing. When? Thursday. You went back? They had paperwork. You signed a lease. I can read, Caleb. I looked at Dad. When are you moving? 6 weeks. Caleb stood and walked to the refrigerator, then back to the table. Why didn't you tell us? I'm telling you now. You made a huge decision by yourself. That's what you wanted. Caleb glanced at me. I kept my expression neutral, though Dad was not entirely wrong. Are you sure? I asked. Dad wiped cream cheese from the knife onto the edge of his bagel. No. It was the most honest answer he could have given. What made you decide? Caleb asked. Nothing. Dad. He looked around the kitchen. This house is quiet. The refrigerator clicked on. I liked quiet when your mother was in it, he continued. Now it's just noise with nobody attached. Caleb sat down. Dad picked at his bagel. I'm not selling immediately, he said. I'll move first. If the place is terrible, I'm coming back. That makes sense, I said. It does? Caleb sounded surprised. Yes, he can try it. Dad nodded. Exactly. We still have to pay utilities here, Caleb said, and insurance, and the aides until you move. Dad's eyes narrowed. I'm just saying, Caleb added, and you wonder why I told you after I signed. Moving out of a house after 41 years required more than 6 weeks. It required a second life for every object. Keep, donate, sell, throw away. Those were the official categories. Dad added, maybe, don't touch. Your mother bought that, and there's nothing wrong with it. There was something wrong with nearly everything. The garage contained 3 broken fans, a box of extension cords tied in knots, 6 cans of paint turned solid, and the washing machine motor from the story Caleb had almost told at the birthday dinner. You fixed that in a snowstorm, I said. Dad looked at the motor. No, I replaced it. Caleb remembers being there. He was in college. I laughed so hard I had to sit on a bucket. What? Caleb asked from the other side of the garage. You were not there. I told you I might have been. You made a whole emotional memory out of a phone call. Dad examined the motor. He told me which parts store was open. Caleb spread his arms. Support. Dad gave him the motor. No, Caleb said. You wanted the story. I don't want a 40-year-old motor. It could be useful. For what? Parts. I install floors. You have a garage. Dana, carrying a box toward the driveway, called, He does not have a garage for that. The motor went to scrap. Sorting Mom's belongings was harder. Dad had kept her coats in the hall closet, including the red wool one she had not worn during the last 3 years of her life. He had removed her shoes, but left a pair of gloves in one pocket. He handed the coat to me. I don't want it, I said. It was your mother's. It won't fit me. You could have it altered. I don't wear red. Dad held the coat as if I were rejecting Mom. Caleb took it from him. Dana will find somewhere to donate it. No, Dad said immediately. We all stood in the hallway. What do you want to happen to it? I asked. He ran his thumb over one of the brass buttons. I don't know. Then we don't decide today. Dad hung it back in the closet. 3 days later, he donated it himself. He gave Caleb his tools, though only after testing him on the names of several pieces. He gave me Mom's recipe box and the 3 crooked bowls from her pottery class. "You always liked these," he said. "You called them drunk bowls. They are drunk bowls." One leaned farther than I remembered. The glaze was pale yellow with Mom's thumbprint visible near the rim. I held it carefully. "She made better bowls than you," Dad said. "My bowls don't leak. That blue mug sweats. All mugs sweat if you put hot coffee in them." "That's not true." We argued about ceramics for 10 minutes. It was the gentlest conversation we had managed in months. Caleb and I packed the bedroom together. He found an old photograph of the 4 of us taken at a restaurant on Mom and Dad's 30th anniversary. I wore a green dress. Caleb wore a tie so loose it looked accidental. Mom was laughing at something outside the frame. Dad was looking at her instead of the camera. Caleb sat on the edge of the bed. "Do you think they were happy?" he asked. "Yes, even with all this. People can be happy and still be unfair." He looked at the photograph. "I always thought you were Mom's favorite." "What?" "You were together constantly. Because she needed things. Before she got sick. I folded one of Dad's sweaters. She worried about you more. That isn't favorite." "No, it felt like it." Caleb placed the photograph in the box marked Dad's apartment. "I think they loved us according to whatever scared them," he said. "They were scared I'd fail, so they praised me. They were scared you'd leave, so they kept needing you." I looked at him. "Did pottery teach you that?" "Dana. Of course." On moving day, Dad wore his good shirt and insulted the movers' lifting technique. "They're going to scratch that table." "The table is already scratched," I told him. "Those scratches belong there." The apartment was smaller than the house, but larger than I expected. Sunlight reached across the living room floor. The courtyard below held 2 maple trees, several benches, and Gloria from the card game smoking a cigarette beneath a no-smoking sign. Dad pointed through the window. "That's her." "The criminal?" "She owes me money." "You moved in to collect $3? "Partly." We arranged his recliner near the window. Caleb set up the television. Dana filled the kitchenette cabinets. I unpacked the yellow stickered medication bottles, then stopped before placing them in the organizer. A staff member would handle reminders. Dad could fill the organizer himself with supervision. I left the bottles in their basket. Dad watched me. "You're not going to do those?" "No, you're already standing there." "So are you." He looked at the bottles, then at me. "I'll do it after lunch." Okay, no argument, no accusation. The absence felt strange enough that I did not trust it. When the last box was inside, Dad said he wanted to return to the house. "Did you forget something?" Caleb asked. "I want to make sure they locked it. The movers locked it. I want to see." We drove back together. The ranch looked unfamiliar without Dad's car in the driveway. Inside, the empty rooms echoed. Pale rectangles marked the walls where photographs had hung. Dad walked through every room. He checked the windows, the back door, and the thermostat. In the bedroom, he stood before the empty closet where Mom's red coat had been. Caleb waited in the hallway. I remained near the door. Dad placed one hand against the closet frame. "I thought I'd die here," he said. Neither of us answered. "Your mother did." "She died at the hospital," Caleb said quietly. Dad shook his head. "She left from here. I went to him." For months, I had been measuring every step toward my father, asking whether it was love or surrender. That afternoon, I stopped measuring long enough to take his hand. He gripped mine. After a while, Caleb placed his hand on Dad's shoulder. We stood in the empty room without fixing anything. Dad stayed at the community that night, then another, then a week. He complained about the mattress, the breakfast eggs, and a man named Walter who controlled the television in the lounge. He also went to the card game 3 times and signed up for transportation to his next cardiology appointment without asking either of us. Denise visited and returned the spare key Dad had given her. He asked whether she wanted to come twice a week just to keep an eye on the place. She told him friendship cost coffee. He agreed. The ranch went on the market after a month. Dad changed his mind twice before the listing photographs. On the third morning, he told Caleb to remove the for sale sign because it was crooked, then corrected the angle himself and left it in the yard. The sale happened quietly. No bidding war, no miraculous price, no family fortune. The money went into Dad's account to pay for the life he had chosen. Caleb watched the closing papers slide across the table and looked older. "You okay?" I asked. "No." "Me neither." Dad signed the last page. It was my house. "We know," Caleb said. Dad looked at him. "You really thought I was leaving it to you?" Caleb considered lying. "Yes, I probably would have." "I know." Dad capped the pen. "Then I guess you lost a house." Caleb looked at me. "No," he said. "I stopped billing Mara for it." Dad frowned, but he did not argue. At the community, he began hosting dinner in the small private room off the main dining hall. He claimed the food improved when guests were present because the kitchen feared witnesses. For the first dinner after the sale, he invited Ron, Linda, Denise, Dana, Caleb, and me. "Same crowd?" Caleb asked when he called. "Smaller." "You know what I mean." I did. The last family dinner had ended with an envelope beside his plate. "Dad wants to say something," Caleb told me. "What?" He wouldn't tell me. That's reassuring. I might say something too. My stomach tightened. "Please don't toast yourself. I learned that lesson." "Did you?" "Bring your ashtray. It's a bowl. Bring it anyway." Dana keeps eating all the mints. I looked at the 3 bowls Mom had made, lined beside mine on my kitchen shelf. "I'll be there," I said. "And Mara?" "Yes?" No envelope this time. I smiled. No promises. The bowl I brought Dana was my 4th attempt, deep blue with a white rim and only a slight lean. She held it at eye level. This one might actually be a bowl. It is a bowl. It doesn't wobble. I'm growing. Caleb took it from her and inspected the bottom. No drainage hole. Why would a bowl have a drainage hole? Your first one did. The first one was experimental. It was an ashtray with ambitions. Dana took it back. "I'm putting mints in it." We were standing in Dad's new living room while he directed Ron's attempt to hang his coat. "Not on the chair," Dad said. "There's a closet. I don't want it crushed. It's a windbreaker. It cost $80. Dad looked at me. He spent $80 on that. Ron had flown from Florida again and spent the ride from the airport describing a 20-minute delay as if he had escaped political imprisonment. The apartment had changed since moving day. A plant sat in the window. Dad had hung the photograph from Mom and Dad's anniversary above the small desk. His recliner faced both the television and the courtyard, though he claimed the angle was temporary. Gloria passed beneath the window and waved up at us. Dad did not wave back. "You play cards with her 3 times a week," I said. "She still owes me $1. It started at 3. I've been collecting." Dad's life at the community had filled without asking our permission. He ate breakfast with Walter, the television dictator, and had joined a group that repaired broken chairs in the woodworking room. He still insisted he hated amateur woodworking, but he had spent 9 hours refinishing a table for the library. He called me about those things. Not the table's weight or whether I could help move it. He called to complain that Walter oversanded one leg. Sometimes he called and asked what I was doing. The first time, I waited for the second half of the question. It never came. "I'm going to pottery," I told him. "Still?" "Yes, still." "Have you made anything round?" "I'll hang up. I'm asking because I care." He was capable of changing just enough to make me suspicious. Beth offered me a 2-day training trip to Cincinnati. Not the regional position, not a permanent promotion, just a chance to lead a workshop because the scheduled trainer had surgery. My first thought was Dad. My second thought was that Dad lived in a building with staff, meals, transportation, emergency pull cords, and Gloria watching the courtyard like a parole officer. I accepted before the third thought arrived. The trip went well. I stayed in a hotel with 1 bed and slept through the night. Dad called once, left a voicemail saying he had beaten Gloria by $6 and did not ask where I was. On the drive home, I listened to the entire audiobook I had failed to hear on my first trip to Pittsburgh. Nothing terrible happened because I left Ohio for 36 hours. Nothing even inconvenient happened. That should not have felt miraculous, but it did. Dad had reserved the community's private dining room for 6:30. At 6:28, he stood in the hallway staring toward the elevator. "They're late," he said. "It's 6:28. Ron's here." "I came with you," Ron reminded him. Linda and Denise arrived together at 6:29. Dad looked disappointed to lose the complaint. The dining room held one long table, 8 chairs, and a sideboard with coffee urns. Through the glass doors, I could see the main dining hall, where Walter was guarding the remote control from 2 women with walkers. Dad had assigned seats. "Why am I next to Ron?" Caleb asked. "Because last time he sat next to Linda, they argued about property taxes." "We didn't argue," Linda said. "He was wrong." Ron removed his windbreaker. "Ohio is taxing people out of their homes." Dad pointed at the closet. Ron sighed and hung it up. I sat between Dad and Denise. Dana placed my bowl in the center of the table and filled it with mints from her purse. Dad tapped the rim. "This one doesn't leak. None of them leak. The blue mug sweats. That is not leaking." Denise leaned toward Dana. "They've had this conversation 7 times. 8, Dad said. Dinner came from the community kitchen. Roast chicken, potatoes, green beans, and rolls Dad claimed were smaller than the previous week's rolls. "You measure them?" Caleb asked. "I have eyes." "Everything looked bigger at the steakhouse because you were younger. That was 6 months ago." "It's been 7, I said. Dad glanced at me. The birthday dinner was not something we mentioned often. Its consequences had lived with us every day, but the scene itself remained sealed, like a room after a fire. Cousin Linda opened it without knowing. She asked Caleb how work was going. He said Darren had promoted another installer to crew lead because Caleb had missed too many mornings. "I'm sorry," Linda said. "It's all right. Your father needed you." Dad cut a potato in half. Linda continued, "You handled so much. The hospital, the move, selling the house. Frank's lucky you stepped up." Caleb set down his fork. Dana looked at him. So did I. He did not stand. He did not lift a glass. He did not arrange his face for an audience. "Mara handled him for years," he said. "I handled a few months and nearly wrecked my marriage." Linda gave an uncertain laugh. Caleb did not. She kept him in the house after the stroke. Medications, food, appointments, everything. I came around, did the visible stuff, and let people call me the caregiver. Dad looked down at his plate. Ron reached for a roll, then seemed to think better of making noise with the basket. Caleb continued. "The move only happened because Mara stopped doing work nobody was counting." My throat tightened. Linda looked at me. "I didn't realize." "You didn't ask," I said. Her face reddened. The old version of me would have softened it immediately. She had not meant harm. She had brought casserole. She lived 30 minutes away and had her own life. All of that was true. So was what I had said. Linda nodded. "No, I didn't." Dad pushed a green bean around his plate. Caleb picked up his fork again. "That's all," he said. Ron cleared his throat. "These rolls are definitely smaller." Everyone laughed, even Dad. The conversation moved on, but not entirely. Something had been returned to the room and placed in its proper seat. After the plates were cleared, Dad told us not to leave yet. Caleb looked at me. I mouthed, "No envelope." Dad stood slowly. He did not have a glass in his hand. "I asked everybody here because I sold the house," he began. Ron nodded solemnly, as if he had just learned this. Dad frowned at him. "You know that. I'm listening." "All right." Dad looked toward the glass doors. In the main dining room, Walter changed the channel. Someone shouted at him. "I didn't want to move," Dad said. "Everybody knows that." "We know," Denise said. "I thought this place would smell like bleach." "It does near the laundry room," Gloria called from a passing scooter outside the doors. Dad waited until she disappeared. "I thought moving meant admitting I couldn't take care of myself." He pressed both hands against the back of his chair. I also thought taking care of me was something my family owed. No one spoke. Dad's eyes moved toward the photograph on the wall, though Mom's photograph was in his apartment, not this room. Maybe he was seeing it anyway. "Your mother did everything before anybody asked," he said to Caleb and me. "She made that look normal." I thought of the list in Mom's kitchen, her careful handwriting, the tasks that disappeared only when she completed them. Dad looked at me. "When she was gone, you did it." My chest felt tight. "You were good at it," he said. "That didn't mean I wanted it. I know that now." His voice had gone rough. He sat down but kept looking at me. "I made being dependable expensive for you." There it was. Not a perfect apology. Not even the word sorry. Dad had always trusted nouns more than feelings. Price, work, house. He understood cost. "Yes," I said. He nodded once. "I shouldn't have." Caleb rubbed one hand over his mouth. Dad continued. "I thought if I praised your brother, he'd keep showing up. I thought if I needed you, you wouldn't leave." The room blurred. "You could have asked me to stay," I said. "I didn't know how. You knew how to ask for coffee." That broke something open. Dana laughed first, then Denise. Even Dad smiled. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were quiet enough that Ron leaned forward. "What?" "Nothing," Dad snapped. We laughed again. He reached beneath the table and brought out the white envelope. For a second, I stopped breathing. It was the same envelope from the birthday dinner, creased and softened from months of being carried by Caleb. My handwriting still crossed the front. For Dad's only caregiver. Dad set it beside my plate. "I don't want that," I said. "It isn't the same stuff." "I still don't want it. Open it before you complain." "Now you know where I get it," Caleb told Dana. I opened the envelope. Inside was the spare key to Dad's new apartment. I stared at it. "You don't need me to have this," I said. "No. The front desk can open your door." "Yes. Staff responds to emergencies." "I've been informed. Then why are you giving it to me?" Dad looked uncomfortable. "In case you want to come by and I'm at cards. That sounds like you want me to water the plant. The plant may need water." I slid the key across the table toward him. His face fell before he could hide it. "I don't want a job disguised as a key," I said. "It's not." "Then ask what you mean." Dad looked at the key between us. "Would you like one?" The question was so small. I picked it up. "Yes." He nodded, relieved, and reached for a mint. Caleb leaned toward me. "You realize he's going to claim he handled the whole key situation." "I did," Dad said. Dessert was apple pie with slices large enough to restore Dad's faith in the kitchen. Conversation loosened. Ron told a story about losing his luggage in Atlanta. Denise invited Linda to a community craft market. Donna asked whether I would make her another bowl. "You have one," I said. "This one's nice. I want one of the dangerous ones. I'll see what I can do." Caleb caught my eye across the table. "Are we okay?" he asked quietly. The same question he had asked in my apartment. I considered it. "We're getting better. I'll take it." When dinner ended, Dad walked us back to his apartment. He moved more slowly after a full meal, but he refused the cane. Inside, he went straight to the kitchenette and opened the medication cabinet. "My pills need sorting," he said. I looked at him. He looked back. For 1 second, the old arrangement waited between us, patient and practiced. "The aide will do it in the morning," I said. "But you're here. I'm here for dinner." Dad's mouth opened. Then he stopped. He glanced at the yellow stickered bottles and closed the cabinet. Fine. It was not fine. I could tell by his face. But it became fine because he allowed the feeling to pass without turning it into my assignment. Caleb picked up his coat. Dana tucked my bowl beneath her arm. Dad walked us to the door. "Are you coming Sunday?" he asked me. "I don't know. What are you asking me to do?" His eyes narrowed, but there was humor in it now. "Visit. Will there be coffee? If you bring the good kind?" "No," he sighed. "I'll buy it. Then yes." I kissed his cheek. Caleb and Dana headed toward the elevator. I stayed behind for another moment. Dad touched the spare key in my hand. "You don't have to call before you come. I'm going to call. I know, and if I don't answer the phone, I might be busy. I know. And if the plant dies, it's a plant, Mara." I smiled. "Good night, Dad. Drive carefully." "I will." The apartment door closed behind me. I heard the lock turn, then the television come on. Dad did not reopen the door to add one more request. Caleb held the elevator for me. As we rode down, he leaned against the wall and exhaled. That went better than the steakhouse. Lower bar. "You didn't even need the envelope. I didn't know he had it." I gave it to him after the move. "Why?" He asked what changed. The elevator doors opened. Outside, the night air was cool. Dana and Caleb walked toward their car together. I stood beneath the parking lot lights with Dad's key resting in my palm. It weighed almost nothing. This time, it did not feel like my whole life.